Good evening. The Rio Rancho Board of Education meeting for Monday, April 12th, 2021 is now called to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance by Noreen Scott. If everyone could mute their microphones and please stand.
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Secretary Scott. Can we get a roll call? Kim, can you do a roll call for us?
I sure can. Just give me a second here and get to the right place. Okay. President Galbraith.
Present.
Vice President Morgan. Secretary Scott. Board Member Cullen.
Present.
Board Member Coleman.
Present.
We have 4 members present.
Thank you so much. We have a quorum present. Before we get into Dr. Cleveland's remarks, I just wanted to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. This is our first meeting, other than our Finance Committee meeting, back in the boardroom. As we speak tonight, for those of us in the boardroom, I just ask that you go ahead and pull your mask down when you are speaking, and then you can put it back up when you are not speaking. So I have this nice lovely on my neck right now, but that's okay. And so I just ask the public who's watching tonight and all of our support staff to just be patient with us as we kind of navigate this new process. I'm hoping maybe at the end of the night, just real quick before we leave the meeting, if we can just kind of say how we're doing and if there's any technical issues that maybe need to be worked out. I also just want to thank everyone who made it possible for us to be in the board meeting or in the boardroom tonight. We have a lot of support staff here, and we have Kim and Jane and Tyler who's here and Claudia who's here. We also have our wonderful security out in the hallway to keep us safe, Mario, who we appreciate so much. Everything, and of course we always have John who's running everything in the background. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. To help us to get back into some normalcy. We'll see how it goes tonight. We're hoping it goes well, and just thank you again. So with that, I will go ahead and pass over to Dr. Cleveland, who has some opening comments, as long as her PowerPoint is currently working. If not, we may have to switch some things around. But Dr. Cleveland, you are muted, Dr. Cleveland. I'll start with that. I think I should get some of the money that comes from.
We'll share it with you. Yes, thank you. It is, we're all getting opportunities to learn flexibility and agility. And so, certainly it has been an interesting experience tonight, but we'll get better at it. And I also want to thank everyone who's put a lot of time into trying to make this work. So I have just a few comments. I'm going to keep them very brief. We've got a lot of information to cover. Noreen Scott will be doing a commendation for our instructional technology and educational technology specialists this evening. You all know that. I mean, I have to tell you that they have been so important and instrumental in keeping the technology infrastructure afloat this year. And they have done a phenomenal job. It's not only supporting our teachers and our administrators, but also our parents and families and students. And they have just done an incredible job. And so I would like to thank Paul Romero, the Executive Director of IT, for his leadership through these really challenging times. He's kept the best attitude, the most can do, we'll get it done. But it has been a task, I don't think anyone imagined when we started this school year. We also have another recognition. They almost seem monthly for our fine arts areas, but Rio Rancho has been recognized as one of the best communities for music education. That's a real honor. And Kurt Schmidt will share with you some of the information about this prestigious award. And we've talked about our fine arts programs and keeping them afloat this year as well. And they have just done some incredible things. So at the beginning of the year, I really wondered how it would work, or could it even work? And it did. And we kept our programs strong and ready to move into the next year. And so thank you, Kurt Schmidt, for all you have done to keep those programs strong as well. This evening, we're going to be talking with you about the expansion of virtual education. And so I'll give you a little bit of background to that. In our meetings with the secretary and his cabinet, basically the direction that's been given to superintendents is that if we have a significant number of parents or students who want virtual services to continue into the next year, then we are to provide those. So we begin to look at what might that look like. And so you'll be hearing about that this evening. And we're trying to accomplish several things. We're trying to give people an opportunity to have that choice to either return in person or to continue virtual experiences next year. We also are trying to work on not asking our teachers, our classroom teachers, to do both. It's been a huge struggle for them this year. That has been one of the things that the union has been very strong about. They've worked closely with us this year to make that happen. And we've had some wonderful experiences in our classrooms with teachers who've been able to balance that. But it's really hard and they're really tired. And they would really like to be able to try to separate those duties out, because sometimes they feel no matter how hard they work, they just can't do enough to meet the needs of both groups of students. And so we've given a lot of thought to what that might look like. And you will have a presentation on that this evening. We have done a survey that was administered, and it verified that we will have a significant number of students who are interested in continuing with the virtual model next year. So, that number fluctuates, and those are not firm commitments as of yet, but I think it's pretty clear that we are going to need to provide those services in the fall. This will result in our need to expand services at the elementary level in particular. As you know, we've had a 6 through 12 program for many, many years, but this is our first year to really do extensive elementary virtual education. And so we will need to look at what those services would look like at the elementary. And then at the middle and high school levels, how can we expand those services to more students? And one of the dilemmas that we're facing is that we've got a really good model. We've had tremendous success over the years with that model. So how do we protect the good things that are part of that, but expand it to greater numbers of students with, obviously, as always, limited resources? And so at the middle school level, it might kind of go one of two ways. It might be a new middle school for virtual education and separate it out of Rio Rancho's cyber site to give them more room. Or if the numbers are not very great, that it probably will continue with Rio Rancho cyber and would not be separated. As of right now, we really don't know how many students and which of those two models we're going to need to propose. And then high school will definitely be served by Edgenuity, and there will be an expansion of those services. But we already have quite a bit of experience in doing that, particularly supporting the other secondary schools. Cyber stepped up and helped with that already, and certainly Heidi Kenworthy has done a lot to support those programs at the individual school sites. We will, as I said, present proposals for all three levels and look for your feedback and any suggestions that you might have. And then the last thing, I know you're so sick of hearing it, but it is, this could change a lot depending on what happens over the next few months. And right before this meeting, I was in a call with one of our neighboring districts, and they shared with me that they're having to close one of their high schools because of the increase in COVID cases. So we really don't know what the future is going to look like, and it certainly could change over the next couple of months. So our presenters this evening will be Karl Loppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, Jana Chenault, Elementary School Improvement Officer, Joy Morales, the Executive Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction, and has been helping out at secondary level some, Rachel Aker, She has been the assistant principal for elementary virtual education. She's been housed at Joe Harris, has worked as the AP there and supporting all of the elementary schools across the district. Julie Arnold, who of course is the principal of the Cyber Academy, and Heidi Kenworthy, the assistant principal and program manager at Rio Rancho Cyber. As I said, this new elementary virtual school that we're proposing would be located at Joe Harris Elementary. That would require, if that were to be what is approved, would require some dividing up of classrooms in order to serve the number of students that we would need to serve. But we do have some space there, and obviously that's the only place that we have any space for our elementary programs. And again, we've got to develop a budget, as Mike Baker and Arlene shared with you earlier. It's pretty hard to build a budget when you don't have firm enrollment numbers. And all of the experiences that you have over many years on how you project a budget and project enrollment, none of those things work for us right now. And none of those would be very useful right now. So the other thing that we are going to have to do fairly soon is register students, and we're going to need a firm commitment from families. Which of the two are you going to do? And because we have to staff for it. And I just can't emphasize this enough. We really wish it could just be flexible, where people could move from one program to the other. And, it's, we understand that people like to have choice, but we can't staff for that. And we've got to know whether a family and students are going to go virtual, whether they would like to return in the fall to in-person learning. Had some conversations with some parents, and their discussion with me is just what I've just had with you. How do I know that? I don't know what the numbers are going to look like this summer. I'd like my child to come back to in-person, but if the numbers don't look good in the fall, of course, I'm not going to send my child back. So I understand that's a dilemma for parents and for students as well as for us. And as I said, we've had a lot of movement this year. We're going to have to ask for very firm decisions next year. We have an important instructional material adoption up for your review this evening. We'll be looking at secondary language arts 9 through 12. It is always one of our most important and most expensive adoptions. And then, once again, despite the Yazzie Martinez decision, it was not completely covered financially. And so we will have to be looking at some operational money to be able to complete the adoption. And yet that's an important adoption. It's one of our most important. And we obviously need to provide our students and staff with the tools they need to be successful. But it certainly didn't meet the Yazzie Martinez standard. All of the districts met again last week, and trying to figure where we're going to go with some of the requirements that have not been addressed yet by the state. And then we'll also have a proposal this evening for new materials for our world languages, and that's another important adoption. And as you know, we're really proud of our world language program, and we certainly want to provide them with the best materials that we can. The presenters for the language arts and world language adoption will be Karl, again, Chief Academic Officer, Suzanne Wynn Wisniewski, who is our Executive Director for Federal, Bilingual, and Native American Programs, and Kristen Oliver and Kelly Pierce, both of whom are curriculum instruction coordinators and have played an important role in this adoption process. So I want to thank everyone. This is a long, involved, so much work goes into it. Thank you all for the time and effort that you have given to bring this proposal to the board this evening. And then last but certainly not least, we have some scholarship nominations. And it's always sad there can only be one that comes out of the district, but all are worthy of this recognition. And we will be sharing with you the information about those nominations. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Okay. Board, do you have any questions? I'll just look over at you, still through the camera, even though you're sitting next to me. Okay, I think we're good. Go ahead, Catherine, if you have something. You can play your mask on too.
Yeah. Cool. Here, can you guys hear me okay with it on? Because it's going to be more difficult for me taking it off. So Dr. Cleveland, I know that you were talking about some high schools being shut down in other parts of the district because of the COVID cases with the quarantine. And I know that we are seeing quite a bit of quarantines now. And so I did have a question from somebody within the community because there were some concerns about the cleaning and kind of what the process is of that, because we are seeing quite a few quarantines from Friday and today. And so my understanding is that all schools are supposed to be sanitized and cleaned on Wednesday afternoons as well as the weekends. And are they hitting every single classroom? And what are they doing with all these cases that we have now that are quarantined? Are they going in there and sanitizing them as well? Thank you. And you're muted too.
Another dollar. I would defer that question to Arlene. I'm sorry, to Melanie Archibald or to Mike, but my understanding is yes, that is happening. We certainly have more people down the building than we've had, and so the cleaning is extremely important. But my understanding is yes. And Mike or Melanie, is there anything else you would want to share with the board?
No, other than I think it was asked after the positive cases reported, if we go in and disinfect, yes, we do. So we disinfect the specific areas that were identified where the individual was at. And then we do clean and disinfect. Well, we disinfect throughout the entire week. And then we do thorough cleaning on Wednesday afternoons and on Saturdays.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question? One of the other things that is looking like we are going to be doing, and I did not plan to bring it to you tonight because we don't have all of the information, and we'll be working on that. But the state is looking at surveillance testing of students, and surveillance testing of students for the general student population, and increased surveillance testing for those in extracurricular, particularly athletics, and looking at perhaps a 10% there. So that I think is going to be a challenge for school districts, particularly dependent upon the parents' attitude about surveillance testing. And so that's going to be something that's going to take a little time and effort to work out. But I think the state is trying to address the very issue that you've raised, is, can we document if there is spread within the schools? So far, we've been pretty lucky, but we did have a significant number of students who were quarantined today. So, I do believe the state is going to move forward with surveillance testing for students as well as for staff, and of course, the ones for staff are those who are not vaccinated.
Okay.
Any other questions that I could answer for you?
Anyone else? Any other questions? And I do think it's important to mention, we are talking about a lot of students quarantining, but it is, I'm going to come down, but they don't all have COVID. It's because we had, a student who had COVID, and we're taking those precautions due to the state and what they've asked us to do, PED. And so we have had a lot who aren't going to be able to be in school, but it is because of one student or a couple of students here and there that we're having to quarantine all those other students. So,
and those quarantine rules and regulations are not ours, so we have to follow those. And I know we have heard from some parents who really are very opposed to that, but hopefully parents will understand that that's not something that is a Rio Rancho public school requirement. It's a state requirement, and we have to adhere to that requirement in order to keep our schools open.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Appreciate your comments today. Okay. So for our next part, for item E, to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Are there any questions or any movement that needs to take place on our agenda tonight?
This is Secretary Scott. I move for approval.
Okay.
And this is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Secretary Scott and a second by Catherine Cullen. Kim, can you take a roll call for us on this?
Yes, ma'am. Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
That's 4-0.
Okay, thank you. For our next time, I also want to I think it was Dr. Clem, is it Melissa Perez who put these awesome masks together for us today? Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I just want to say thank you to Melissa Perez for putting these really awesome masks together today. That will be going up and down.
And to Win, who purchased them.
Oh, thank you, Win. I was wondering because I didn't have time to get down here. So thank you, Win, too, for going and purchasing those for everyone. I was thinking I just don't have time to go purchase one. So thank you. They're fantastic. Okay, moving on to our public comment. We have 3 public comments that we received. Our first one is is an anonymous one, but they were expressing great gratitude to Martin Luther King Elementary School, and not only for this year, but also for previous years. This year's been crazy, and so they wanted to express their gratitude for all that they've done for their student, but also in years past that they've done a great job. Also, we had another one from Phoenix Mello asking, does anyone have that one in front of them? It's asking, hold on, let me go to it. Sorry, I had issues with my printout today. I apologize. Asking when it will be mandatory for all students to go back into school. Our third one is from Louise Phillips, who is concerned about how many students are being sent home, asking about what we're doing in the schools, which has been addressed, what we're doing in schools for distancing and cleaning and all of those things, and asking those questions. For those who would like to give public comment, please go onto our website, onto the school website, and then you can go to the school board page. You will see a form site there where you can type in your public comment. We read all of those comments, and we have a fantastic staff who does their best to make sure that they also look through all those comments and address where they can. Moving on to our next is our commendations. Our first commendation will be given by Board Secretary Noreen Scott.
Well, members of the board, I have to tell you that I am so proud of our school district and our community. We've always reminded me of the little engine that could. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. But never has it been more clear than during COVID with our IT staff. They just stepped up and did an amazing job. And I remember the first board meeting after COVID and we were shut down, and they were talking about getting Chromebooks out to every single student. And I don't think I don't know that everyone understands that was 17,000 computers, and it was a one-to-one model with a parent portal launched for parents so they could track their students. It was really an exciting thing to watch and to see us really step up and then get creative and partner with Sparklight and find a way for our students who weren't previously on the internet to be connected. And I don't know if people understand, but they installed 211 Sparklight internet connections and 548 hotspots. I mean, that's incredible. And they did it in a positive way, really thinking about the students and how we could do the best job we could for the students. It was just remarkable and creative. I mean, I think creativity was the thing that impressed me the most. The service desk has had an incredible record of same day response to people with problems. And I'm just amazed at the energy and effort. They handled about 1,200 phone calls, about 1,600 tickets that were for issues to be resolved. It's really been incredible, and my hat's off to the whole team and the wonderful job that they've done. both in operations and educational technology and in networking. Um, I did not realize till I got on the school board that there were that many threats to our internet system. And there were 114,000. I mean, that just blows my mind, of high and critical threats blocked onto the RRPS firewall. I mean, so our people have blocked that many uh, attempts, thwarted them, phishing attempts. All of us get those phishing phone calls and phishing challenges with the computer, but to think about 114,000. So I really want to recognize the team and thank them for a really wonderful job that they have done through very difficult circumstances. And I just can't say thank you enough, because it's really, really been uh, the little engine that could. And they never stopped and said, no, we can't. They said, we're going to, and we did. And so I thank the whole team. And I really, really appreciate it and would like to commend them. And Dr. Cleveland, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
You're muted, Dr. Cleveland.
All right. They have done a wonderful job, and I think we'll look back in the future and really wonder how it happened, how it all got done. The other thing, just on a historic note, I have in my office a framed book, The Little Engine That Could, and that was a gift from Debbie Moore, who our former chamber executive director, and that's a lot what she said. And I think she gave it to us on our 15th anniversary of the school district. But it has been something that's been consistent over a long period of time. So thank you for your comments. But that is a remarkable team. They've done just an incredible job.
I have to tell you, I was very moved as I drove past Rio Rancho High School today as school was getting out, and the police officers were out there directing traffic, and we actually had kids driving out of the parking lot. It was almost emotional after all this time to not be in school. But, IT, I can't thank you enough, but I just want to thank everybody who's kept us going this year. It's really been incredible.
Thank you, Secretary Scott. I believe Paul Romero is on, and his team, if you guys want to. It's not terrifying to come on and say hi for a second. We'd love to see you in your faces. And I just want to add, Noreen did a great job. I just want to say thank you as well. And Paul, would you like to add anything?
I think I'm causing some feedback. Hang on one second.
Technology.
Paul, is your yeah? Well, I think your might work now. Try it now.
How's that?
You must have another device in the room that's also. Come on, IT. No.
I'm gonna let Terry talk.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I think our teams have been amazing. We have technicians and ed techs that have worked really hard and gone above and beyond, worked weekends, worked during spring break, worked before school, after school, to get those Chromebooks sanitized and ready for kids. And we just have an awesome team and an awesome leader in Paul Romero. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. You guys really did an awesome job. And Paul, I can't thank you enough for everything that you and your team have done.
Yeah. All right, Paul, you go. Okay, you're good. Thank you all. Go ahead, Dr. Cleveland.
Scott, would you like to say anything as well? I mean, he's got a lot of the technical folks that he works with, and he's fended off all kinds of nefarious folks who wanted to take our system down. But Scott, is there anything you'd like to add about your team, the folks you work with?
Well, sure. I mean, thank you so much for the recognition. We really appreciate it. And, the entire team pulled together to pull all this stuff off. And I definitely want to thank our network team. We got guys on our team that work very, very hard. Chris Martin, Fernando Chavez, a new addition, Michael Bolton. And so we work together to, help prevent some of these threats, and we get them every day. And, even some of the best networks in the world get hit very, very hard. So we work hard, and wanted to thank all the technicians. They work really hard. So, and Paul and Terry. And so we really appreciate the recognition. Absolutely. It's been a year. So thank you.
So President Galbraith, Board Member Scott, thank you so much. We're very blessed.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. It's just not working today for us, but thank you all. If anyone from the board, if anyone else would like to say anything, you are more than welcome to unmute and do such. Catherine, would you like to just add anything, and then we can go to Win?
Absolutely. I just want to say how appreciative we are of everything that you've done, always, but especially during this pandemic. You guys have been, you've exceeded everybody's expectations, and you keep going on. I mean, it's just amazing what you have accomplished this year. And I know that is quite the challenge. And I'm so appreciative that we were able to get all those Chromebooks out to our students, because nobody could imagine what it was going to be like this year, and how long it's been. So thank you so much for everything that you guys do. And
Thank you. So now you're the group that the students can blame when we'll never have another snow day. So no, I do just want to say you all have been extremely helpful as I've had my my issues and needed assistance, and I just want to say especially to Paul, what I just appreciate so much is your humbleness, acknowledgement of your faith, and yet the level of skill and expertise that you bring to the table that I've just seen exhibited, whether it's here at the district or in presentations to the New Mexico School Board Association. So, and Terry, just a special thank you for the trainings, for your sense of humor. And I've just really appreciated that. And Tyler for helping me get my laptop back up. So just a special thank you to everybody. So I can't even imagine how this has been, and you just have plodded on without um, any sense of complaining or anything like that. So thank you so much.
President Goldberg, I do have to say, Tyler, thank you for everything that you've been doing with the board. So, I mean, we appreciate all you, but Tyler's been in here helping us, and it's been a challenge both last week trying to set this up and then today. So thank you.
I do have to say, for our school IT, my daughter was having issues with her Chromebook, and she was at school, and I think within her class period they reset everything, and she's like, I don't know if I can log back in, and her teacher came over with her new password, and it was pretty amazing how quickly that they were able to do all those things. And so when any students come to me, I'm like, they'll get it done really fast. You just throw in that ticket, and it'll happen. So we appreciate everyone in our district and at all of our schools who have done so much for all of these things this year. It's been a lot, and so thank you again. Okay, yes, go ahead, Dr. Cleveland.
Could I just say one more thing? You know, we've been through an awfully tough year. We all know that. But one of the long-term silver linings, I believe, is that we are so much better technologically than we've ever been. Our teachers are stronger. It's been hard, but they have learned so much, and Terry's given them wonderful support. Our infrastructure overall, from our network to other, the infrastructure is so much stronger. And one of the things I've said is when you open the technology window to families, they never go back. It's kind of like when you got your first TV. Whoever went back after that. And so it's not only the academic piece, but it opens a whole new world of opportunity to families. And so I think that's going to be one of the long-term lasting benefits. As hard as it's been, all the struggles this incredible team has had to deal with, but in the long run, we will be stronger for it. And so that's the silver lining. I just look at how far we've come and what all we've learned. And technology, Paul reminds me regularly that technology is always a work in progress. You never get there. You never get it finished. It's never done. There's always more to do, always more to learn. But boy, have we learned a lot. And this team has made that possible.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cleveland. And thank you all once again. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right. We also have another commendation tonight that I'm going to pull this down. That will be given by Kurt Schmidt, the Best Communities for Music Education Award. And so we welcome Kurt Schmidt onto our meeting.
President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, good evening. Founded in 2006, the NAM Foundation represents the generosity and philanthropy of the music products industry. A supporting organization of NAM, which stands for the National Association of Music Merchants, the NAM Foundation is funded through trade association activities and donations. Every year, the NAM Foundation recognizes communities for the outstanding efforts of their teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who make music part of a complete education for every child in their communities. School districts that meet certain criteria are awarded with the designation Best Communities for Music Education. And I'm happy to report that Rio Rancho Public Schools has, for the third year in a row, received this designation for 2021. RRPS is one of only 5 districts in New Mexico and one of only 686 districts in the United States to receive the designation for this year. This designation would not be possible, first and foremost, were it not for the talent, hard work, and daily dedication of all 32 music teachers in the district, whose names and locations you can see on the screen. Incidentally, 7 of those teachers, just shy of a quarter of all of our music teachers, are alumni of RRPS and its music programs. And their desire to return home and be a part of the very programs that help produce them is, I believe, a stupendous testament to the quality of our music programs over time. This designation would also not be possible without the scores of talented and committed music students of the district who annually perform in the top echelons of music events in the state and beyond. And we thank their parents for all the support and encouragement they provide, and to the numerous businesses in Rio Rancho who donate time, money, and materials to our music programs. Further, the NAM Best Communities for Music Education Award would not be possible without the strong and indefatigable leadership of Dr. Cleveland, who has championed the arts in our district since its very inception. And finally, the vision and financial commitment of the Board of Education has made possible not only this award, but more importantly, the enduring opportunity for all students to have and flourish within a sound music education. So thank you for your attention tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Dr. Cleveland, would you like to add?
I would just add that this is another really phenomenal group, and over a period of time, Kurt Schmidt has pulled this group together. And when we began this year, I kind of, honestly, I had a real hard time even figuring out what that would look like and how that would work. And they have taken and made it work in trying circumstances. But I was talking to one parent who has a child in Mika Proctor's class that said that music was the lifeline for her child this year. It was what kept her focused and going and positive. And so I know that's true in all of these schools, certainly not just in one. And you know, they have just come up with some of the most innovative, creative ways to keep students attached to school and attached to these programs and to build these programs. And so thanks to every single director, teacher, also to our parents and students who worked hard as well to make it work and stayed with these programs and figured a way for it to work for their children. But this is a wonderful recognition. It said this is the 3rd year. Certainly not a surprise, but it's a validation of the hard work that we see in these programs every single day. So congratulations to Kurt and to every one of these instructors for the really fine job they have done this year. And last but not least, it's a great benefit for our program. And you know, I'm sure you are aware, very much aware, that a good number of people come to this school district because of the fine arts programs that we offer, the quality of those programs. And they continue to be a huge draw for our district. So Kurt, thank you so much. And again, thanks to everyone whose name is listed this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland, and thank you, Mr. Schmidt. And as I look through that list of names, I can't say I know every single one on there, but I know a lot of them, and I've seen their passion for their students. And we did show that video of teachers who, and working and doing things virtual. This was a few months back, and I started getting very teary-eyed. And part of it was seeing some of those, some of our music teachers who I've had just great relationships with over the years, who have done so much for my kids, and to see them doing things anyway, despite what's going on. And so I'm so very grateful to all of them who have worked at the elementary, at the middle school, and at the high school level. Truly, we have it's amazing. They're amazing individuals. So thank you. Board, I just want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else you would like to add. Noreen Scott, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just my thanks, Kurt, for the great program that you run, and the pride that we can all have in our school. Thank you.
Thank you. And Catherine Cullen?
Yes, I just want to say I know it's been an extremely tough year for the music program, and with all the restrictions that they put on the music program. So I really wanted to say thank you so much for overcoming so much of that and getting our students back out there and playing. And to be able to see the videos that you have put out this year with the students is just absolutely amazing, and how well they're able to work together. So, and I know we do have such a great program here in Rio Rancho, and it is just shows the caliber of the teachers that we have, and we certainly appreciate it under your leadership. So thank you, Kurt.
And Wynn Coleman.
I just have to say ditto to what everybody else has said, and I feel like this has been, in the years that I've been on the board, probably the year where I've seen just so many things about what the fine arts has been doing, and how much they've excelled during this unprecedented time. I do have a question, because I know I had posed this when another department did a presentation, but Kurt, what are you seeing with seniors that have potentials for scholarships, and how has that been for you as things have been virtual and students are trying to get scholarships to colleges for fine arts?
Board Member Coleman, I can speak from personally, because my son's a senior and is going to music education next year, and it was a little difficult to get music together and do the auditions, but they were possible. Most universities are doing or did or are in the process of doing virtual auditions. You send in a recording or something, have an interview via Skype or something. So I've not heard that they've been hampered in any way more than usual. They seem to have gone forward. I could do a little more digging, but I think what I've heard in the students I know who are going on in music, they've been able to apply for and receive substantial scholarships this year.
It's great to know. Thank you.
Thankfully, yeah.
Yes, and thank you for everything that you've done and your department has done for our students.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Mr. Schmidt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Make sure. So we'll now move on to our reports, making sure I'm looking at the right thing. And so our first and only report will be proposals for delivery of virtual education services for elementary and secondary students for the 21-22 school year. And we have Karl Loppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, Janet Chenault, will also be on. There will be many presenters, and I won't go through all of them, but you will see each of them as they get on and present their part tonight. And we appreciate them all being here. And so with that, I'll turn the time over to you all.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and Dr. Cleveland. It's hard to believe that it was a year ago that we all switched to 100% virtual, and we were presenting a plan to you for that and what that was going to look like. And we had a lot of wonders. This isn't the right presentation. I would not know what to say for that. I would wing it, but I wouldn't be sure. So we're presenting this to you tonight, but we've been talking about this for months and months and trying to figure out if we could have a virtual school, what it would look like. So several months ago, we started planning. And when I say we, it was Rachel Aker, Joy Morales, and Suzanne Wen. And we talked a lot about what it would look like and how we could sustain this and see if it would be successful. Thank you, Claudia. And so we looked at continuing with 100% virtual, with a hybrid model, or full reentry, and what that would look like. We watched webinars from other states, tried to get a lot of ideas. I share this with you so that you have the background that we've looked at everything we possibly could before we bring this proposal to you as what we think would be our best option for next school year. Currently, well, not currently, this was as of March 1st, we had almost 40% of our elementary students in a virtual setting. As of today, that's 2241. We've received almost 500 students back into our buildings when we came back into full force. We then pulled some percentages for you by grade level so that you could see how did this virtual elementary school compared to the district percentages, and it's pretty close. We were surprised at, you could almost put one over top of the other. So it was a good representation of our district. One of the conversations we had and we're very serious about is if we're going to create a virtual option, we want it to be equitable. It's very important to us that it's a reflection of our district and that it's open to all students who could be successful in that virtual environment. And so this gave us confirmation that grade level wise, it was very representative of our district. What you have in front of you is the current or relatively current numbers at each site and each grade. So you can get an idea of how many students are now participating in virtual. The next thing that we looked at was what are we talking about when we talk about students from different backgrounds? Again, this was a huge conversation for us. You know, students that come from various family situations. We wanted everybody to have an opportunity to participate if they want to. And so we wanted to see what our demographics look like as a district. And again, this was actually really surprising. Rachel pulled this for us, and you can almost put one over top of the other to show that our current virtual situation reflects our district very closely. And so we're very proud of that. This is some of the services that we offer in elementary school. So SAT, Student Assistance Team, is a huge part of our elementary program. Students with 504s, individualized education plans. We look at students with free and reduced lunch and English language learners. And again, when you look at these side by side, it's representative of our districts. We thought that was important to share with you, particularly when you look at, you know, what choice parents made. It's very interesting that it reflected our entire district without any plan in place for that. We made some assumptions to present this plan, this possibility to you. So we are assuming that we are going to have families that still want to have a virtual option next year. We're going to assume that we can grow this program. We have 40 Rio Rancho teachers who are teaching virtual students, and 23 of those have expressed an interest to continue, and they're willing to transfer from their home school to the new school if this is an option. We assume that the teachers who do this will become experts in distance learning. And we are assuming, this is all based on the current health order, that if students are not successful in the virtual model, that we can have them come into the building if that's what's best for them. And so we'll be offering a learning compact that goes with that. This is Rio Rancho's mission. We created a vision. This is very tentative, but if we had an idea of what this school would look like in the future, if we could see it, this is what the vision would be, that it would be engaging. Even though it's a virtual option, we would make it engaging, and our teachers have done a great job this year. Rigorous, standards-based, where students are at the center and parents and teachers are all active participants. We brainstormed as a committee and brought this to Cabinet and Dr. Cleveland for the elementary school. We thought about our igniting student potential and what would be a possible name for the school, and we came up with Spark with 2 R's, so you could see the Rio Rancho in there. And then of course we've included Cyber's logo. You know a lot of this already as to why we believe in a separate program. The other option that we looked at that just doesn't seem feasible would be to leave kids at their home school and try to find individual virtual teachers at each site. And that just isn't possible. So a separate program would be a quality option for a family. We want to make sure that if we do a virtual program, it's a good virtual program. It's an excellent program, and we're not piecemealing it together based on whatever resources we have in the moment. We can consolidate resources. Targeted professional learning. One of the challenges that has occurred this year is trying to find time. Rachel's tried to find time to work with just the teachers of the virtual students. And the principals have been great, but they also have their own plans for their staff. So trying to find that balance of letting them have PD with their own site staff, but meeting their individual needs for a virtual instruction is very different. So we could use those professional learning committees for that purpose. We can use that future ready framework and really look at a technology-based instruction. Connections to students outside of New Mexico or across the United States through a program like this. Their support from district office and curriculum and instruction, and specifically would be targeted for what the teachers need and what the students need. Technology best for our teachers. Our teachers have done they've done everything they can to make this year successful, but the one thing we've heard over and over is that switching between platforms and doing both is very difficult. It's best for scheduling at all the school sites, and it is best for our students with special needs as well as their service providers. So the next slide will show you a tentative staffing list, but that would be based on students who are interested in enrolling in the program. When we asked who wanted to come back in person, we added a question, would you be interested in a virtual option for next year? So this is very tentative numbers, 571 responses, but over 500 of the students who are still in the virtual program didn't respond. But this gives us kind of an idea of what we would be looking at. We broke that down and you can see where the challenges are. So for instance, if you looked at Rio Rancho Elementary School, we don't have enough students at each grade level for one teacher. It's just not feasible for us to have a teacher at every grade level at every school. And if you look at the research put out and the information put out by the Public Education Department, they said if you have an interest across your district and you have a guaranteed and viable curriculum that spans all your schools, it's best to do a virtual school. We did a tentative mock-up sheet. Again, as you see these numbers, we're thinking about a school of possibly 600 students. So this is on the high end. We don't know how many students are going to participate, but this would be what we need. If we're going to have a separate school, it would require a principal. That principal would have to do everything all the other principals are doing regarding staffing, evaluations, allocations. The special education teachers, that's currently what Joe Harris has with their enrollment. So we just put 4. All of this is based on pretty much kind of guessing. We don't know how many special education students we would have. So we would have to build the program around the kids when we find that out. We do want to make sure it is an inclusive program. So we would do what we've done for every other school as an instructional coach, English language development coordinator, teacher of the gifted, a counselor, social work, education technology specialist, which if approved, we're looking at a position that would span K-12. So it would support teachers and students all the way from kinder through cyber, possibly needing a reading interventionist based on needs. We're working very closely with Kurt Schmidt to determine what related arts would look like. We're not quite sure that we can move teachers from current schools like we are general ed teachers. We may have to hire more related arts teachers to support the virtual staff, but we're working closely with Kurt to figure that out when we get numbers. We will need somebody to do registration and attendance specifically for this school. That's been a challenge this year. And whether or not we need an administrative assistant really depends on enrollment and whether or not that can be an existing position. And then this page breaks down the cost after you take away the GE teachers that would come from other sites. It's around $700,000. But again, that could be reduced dramatically depending on how many students we get or how much need there is. So we may only need a half-time EL coordinator, half-time teacher of the gifted. So we may have to consolidate some positions. We spoke with IT for resources for technology and what we'd have to do to set up the classrooms. And so we want to thank Terry for this slide. She's worked with other schools and teachers who have been, along with Rachel, who have been doing the streaming in their classrooms and working in the virtual. So she gave us a list. We know that we could use the printer and the copy machine at Joe Harris, so we probably wouldn't need to purchase those first year, year one. But these are some of the needs we'd have. And when we look at the students, we want to make sure that students are successful. One of the challenges this year, as you are all aware, has been the attendance. So we would expect, what we're asking for is that we would be able to send information out when another questionnaire to families, more like an application. If you're interested, fill this out. And then we would transfer students that have enrolled in their home school into the virtual school. We want to make sure that families understand the commitment that comes with this. It's a lot for parents who want their students to be virtual. They really have to be that instructional coach for students to be successful. And attendance is or can be a concern. So this year, in the 2,700 kids that did virtual learning, we had about 19% chronic absenteeism, which means they've missed 10 or more days for whatever reason. But we have to also keep in mind attendance was messy in the beginning, and we had students who were counted absent that parents said were there. And so we take all of that with a grain of salt, but that has to be a component of this program. Parents have to commit to their kids showing up and participating. So we want to look at attendance this year as one of those success factors. And we want to make sure it'll meet their educational needs. And so if the student has an IEP, we need to make sure that we have the resources to meet their needs. The state, and there was another educational study that was done, strongly recommends that all students in self-contained classrooms come in person. However, we know as a district, it really is IEP based. And so we need to work with families and figure out what we can do to support them. The instructional model will be fully online, but we want teachers and students to have opportunities for in-person field trips or times that they can get together and do some learning together. So we want that to be an option. It would be both in whole group and small group settings, online and offline, so more project-based activities. And we want it to maintain the rigor and utilization of the curriculum. Currently, we have Google Classroom as a learning management system. The state also has Canvas. So we would look and see. We're not quite sure if there's any interest in Canvas at this time, so we're moving forward with the idea that it would be Google Classroom. Considerations for elementary, we will have to cap the enrollment at some point. We have to, right now we're saying around 600, but we would have to get a solid number and cut off applications or transfers, I should say, to that school so that we can staff every school in the district. We've been working with food services to talk about how students could still continue to get lunch even if they chose to be virtual. One of our biggest challenges this year is curriculum and materials at home, making sure that families can have the resources they need, especially for the little kids, the younger ones who will need hands-on manipulatives for math. We need to make sure that our families who choose virtual have Wi-Fi access. There will have to be a separate front office staff location, a specific program in Power School with a state ID. Teachers will have to transfer and kids will have to transfer to the new school. And once students disenroll, if they joined the virtual program and then decided they wanted to go back to their home school, they would have to stay there for the remainder of the year. We wouldn't allow students to move back and forth between the two schools. So if this is approved by the board, we will apply for a school ID with the New Mexico Department of Ed. We will set an application to parents so they can register, work on a transfer process for teachers and for students, look at the additional staffing that needs to happen, where the teachers will be teaching and what those classrooms will look like at Joe Harris. We may have to have 2 teachers in 1 classroom. The front office, a tentative parent university on April 20th so we can explain to families what this is going to look like and answer their questions. And then on the right is a list of the staffing we would have to hire. And I turn it over to Karl.
Thank you, Jana. It's Karl Loppelman, Chief Academic Officer. Next slide, please. Before I get started, I'd like to recognize Heidi Kinworthy and Julie Arnold. Julie is the principal at the Rancho Cyber Academy, and Julie is the assistant principal. And we've had a dynamic team there for a number of years, and we're ready to expand. In front of you is a mission, a very simple mission, that is enhanced learning through the use of effective technology. And the vision is to create a positive and engaging model of distance learning, because distance learning can be disengaging if teachers aren't trained and well versed in how to use the curriculum, the applications to engage students and collaborate. Next slide, please. And much like the elementary, it looks similar. Right? If you look at this a little higher, but 42% of our students are currently enrolled in a virtual delivery model. And here again, we have similar demographics. Well, actually, when we look at this, it's actually the percentage of virtual students by grade. So it's not really demographics. I think that's the next slide. So it looks very similar to the elementary, other than I do think we have an error on the bottom graph. I think the grade levels should be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, not 1 through 7. I believe that's correct. But if you look, the breakout is similar to elementary. Next slide. Here are our current virtual students by population by site. And we'll take time to look at that. There seems to be, I don't know if there's a pattern, but obviously Independence has fewer students. A lot more of the students are in person because of the need of those students, obviously. And cyber, actually this year, middle school, really, most of the parents thought they would basically have some time at the school site, but you can see as you go up the grade levels, there's more students. The current student demographics, sorry, I can't speak this evening. If you look at it, it is actually identical almost. It's a little bit different than elementary. I think the elementary had actually more Hispanic students in student population actually in school versus the virtual population, but very close to our, and I think Jana made a good point. When you look at demographics, access is important, and it looks like pretty much our students mirror each other from the virtual population to the students in school. Again, SAT processes across seem very similar to the all student secondary versus virtual. 504 is very identical. IEPs very close, and our free and reduced, because that is a great denominator in terms of what impacts students' learning is a student from poverty. And we see in both cases, both all RRPS secondary students and virtual students are identical, as well as English language learners. I think this looked a little bit like what Dr. Cleveland talked about earlier. This year we learned a lot. We learned that when you schedule high schools, it's best to schedule it with teachers separate from the teachers teaching in person, from those teachers teaching face-to-face. And that's our goal this year. And we need to get started on that as soon as possible. So we did notice a quality option for families who've experienced success. And many students have experienced success this year as well as in the past at cyber and also in a virtual environment. And some students have not. I think consolidation of resources and master schedules is critical so that we actually identify teachers now. They'll be teaching virtually, and that those will be separate from the secondary schedule. Professional development will be ongoing, and we talked about and recognized Terry, and we recognized our coordinators I think a couple weeks ago in terms of work we do with CNI and the IT department. That's absolutely essential. And the PLC, which is, I think was established in 2004 in this district, is absolutely essential in the distance learning environment. It's not just those face-to-face schools. It's you have to make sure that you make that time, carve at that time, and that for teachers to work together collectively so that you have a common culture in that distance learning and common delivery of instruction. I believe the implementation of technology-based instruction resources, and we have that commitment to future ready in the district, will be very helpful to us as we move forward in that foundation that you saw this evening, basically, whether it's infrastructure or actually the instructional delivery. And the connections, we've been actually connecting to students outside New Mexico and the USA for a long time now, by the way. And that's part of virtual learning, and it should be. And it actually occurs even in our face-to-face classrooms. I think it can occur in both settings. And the target support from not only CNI, but the entire district office to make sure this works. Capitalize on currently successful programs while seeking to adjust the cyber that will provide opportunity for successful experiences to larger, more diversified groups of students. And I think Dr. Cleveland said earlier, once you have something, a technology, and you start to use it and use it effectively and it sticks, those things that work will stick. And those are the things we want to look at and replicate across our district. Next slide, please. Staffing. Okay. I think is this yours, Julie? You're going to turn it over to you now and talk a little bit about staffing. Is that correct? Thank you, Julie.
President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, thank you for having us this evening to speak about this. I want to go back to what Dr. Cleveland said. I wrote it down. It's always a work in progress, and there's always more to learn. So as we present this evening, I just want to make sure that this is truly a work in progress, and I'm very excited to learn more about it. I have been principal of Cyber Academy for 3 years now, and to have the opportunity to expand and intervene and help more students in a different way, or to encourage them to grow in a different way, is very exciting for me. I want to expand on what Karl said about capitalizing on our currently successful program. Cyber Academy has been very successful for a multitude of years, longer than I've been here, and I want to keep that going. I don't want to break something that's not broken. And so those were the conversations that we were having as we were looking into growing the virtual program for secondary schools. The current numbers that you're looking at, the current requests, scare me just a little bit. They are 717 students that we would add to our already existing 160 students. So that would put us up to like 880 students at Cyber Academy, which, going from a small school, is a little bit terrifying for me. But that being said, it's an exciting opportunity. Looking at these numbers, again, like Jana said, these numbers were presented in a survey that was done in March. So the numbers and the accuracy of what we have to work with, we're kind of guessing. We don't have 100% knowledge of what it is we have to work with. So we are truly guessing. Whereas Jana took the side and went with the higher number of 600, I have taken a little bit lower perspective on this. And the numbers on the next slide please, for our projected allocations is based on 350 to 400 kids. Because if we truly staffed for 800 kids, the reality of what the district financially has to offer would probably not be successful and be overwhelming to teachers. Some of the projected allocations that we're looking for as the current situation sits, we'd look for about 12 to 15 teachers. 12 of them would be general ed teachers. I can break that down just a little bit further for you. There would be one middle school science teacher, one high school science teacher, one middle school English teacher, one high school English teacher, and so on for all the core classes to equal 8. And 3 of them, 2 or 3 more would be special ed, but again, we're guessing. We won't have numbers until we put out the applications and parents actually apply for the concept of either the blended learning model or the 100% virtual model that we are offering for all students. We would share an ed tech with the elementary, and we would need an EL coordinator. All of the students, just like now, would have the opportunity to participate in the performing arts, the athletics, the ROTC at their home schools. Whether it be middle school or high school, they would have the opportunity to participate in the fine arts, related arts, athletics, ROTC, all the things that the other schools have to offer that we don't provide on our campus, so that they still have those opportunities. Looking at all this, that in total would be about, I believe the number is incorrect, but it's about 180. So that's what we're looking at. So we have put an asterisk at the bottom. And we are thinking that if for some reason the middle school grows and we have a lot of middle school students that want to be blended, I don't know how many of you, I know some of you have, but I don't know how many of you have been in Cyber Academy, and we are a tiny little building that is an open floor. And so that being said, we wouldn't be able to house all the students. So we would have to look at an option to start the new middle school, and that would be something that would take other positions that were administrative. I mean, looking alone at principal, administrative assistant, registrar, and counselor would be the base people that we feel like we would need to make a brand new virtual middle school work. So we have included all of that for you to see, though I, again, am making guesses and speculations based on numbers that we don't actually have in front of us until after we put the applications out for parents to fill out, which will begin after our parent university on Tuesday. So by the end of May, my guess is I'll have some pretty good solid numbers. Middle of May, end of May, we'll have some pretty good solid numbers. Next, oh, thank you. Next slide. We're looking at the learners and what the actual environment is going to look like. So the transfer process is going to have to occur. We want to assure that the distance model will meet all the educational needs of the students. So again, we're looking at the blended and the 100% virtual, all located at Rancho Cyber Academy. Again, attendance is like a dirty word for all of us this year. It's just been so hard to keep up with. So we want to check for attendance and participation with their previous online learning, but we want to create a rubric because we understand the accuracy of the attendance during the pandemic has been quite frightening, to be honest. But we want to look at a rubric. So we want to look at their participation, but we want to base it on several different things. So we're going to create a rubric as to acceptance for the students into the 100% virtual model. And the way we're going to set up the 100% virtual model will allow for us to take daily attendance and have a hard line on students being engaged and participating and being in school. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. We will have a parent and student compact/contract to set expectations for program participation. We currently have a contract for the blended side, and we're looking to create a compact to go for the 100% virtual piece. So those are some things that we're looking at doing. The instructional model itself, for the 100% virtual, I'm going to assume that you guys all understand the 100% blended side of our school. And so if you have questions about it, feel free to ask at any time. But I'm going to focus on the 100% virtual because that's what we're expanding into. So we're going to use Edgenuity for grades 6 through 12. That being said, we are providing a different concept than what's been happening through the pandemic. We have started this school year in August, not being 100% sure what we were doing. We started with Google Classroom, we started with Edgenuity, we've started with we started with hybrid. We had 3 different master schedules that the high schools were building. That being said, it turned into we were on Google Classroom most of the year up until February, and then the hybrid could take place. So now we have a change in learning, and the 100% Edgenuity kids stayed 100% Edgenuity. And Cyber Academy was actually doing great, and we kept continuing doing great, which was what we were doing. But the 100% Edgenuity kids, they don't have specified teachers that are following them, monitoring them, teaching them. I speak for this because I am the listed teacher for some of these kids. And as a principal, it is very difficult to be teacher and principal at the same time. So I speak to that. So one of the things we want to do is take the 100% virtual model where the kids are on their own and use the blended model of what's working at Cyber Academy this year based on what the teachers at my school are doing right now. And we want to make it a better program that is going to help a lot of students be successful. So Edgenuity for 6 through 12. However, every child in grades 6 through 12 will attend 1 block class a day, Monday through Friday. Hour and a half is what I'm looking at scheduling right now, but they will attend a Google Meets with their core teachers and their advisor 1 day a week. For example, 1 day will be if I'm a 6th grader, 1 day will be 6th grade advisory. I'll go to 6th grade advisory for an hour on Monday, whenever my advisory teacher can schedule it during the day. On Tuesday, as a 6th grader, I'll go to math for an hour and a half. On Wednesday, I'll go to science for an hour and a half. On Thursday, I'll go to English for an hour and a half. And on Friday, I'll go to social studies for an hour and a half. That is going to help with attendance, accountability, and the most important part for me that that's going to help with is engagement of the students so that they don't get lost in the cyber world. That takes part of the blended model that is working so well right now and adds it into the virtual model so that all of our students can be successful, which is the ultimate goal and which is what I'm most excited about as principals. So I want to make sure that we have the opportunities for our students to be successful. That being said, one of the other extra pieces to that is the students that are struggling will have opportunity to meet a second Google Meet during the day with their teachers if that's something that they need. And the teachers will also provide office hours so that students can schedule to have a time to say, hey, I just don't get this math problem. Can you spend some time with me and help me figure out how to do this? I use math as an example because it's my weakness. So that being said, I think that they will have a little bit of intervention, a little bit of enhancement in their learning. They will definitely have accountability, and they will definitely have engagement, which is what we're looking for. One of the other things that I feel very strongly about is Edgenuity. I think it's a phenomenal program that meets the needs of our kids. That being said, I think Edgenuity at Rio Rancho Cyber Academy is well provided for, so to speak, because we spend a lot of time with our new students teaching them how to use Edgenuity, how to do the calendars, how to use the notes and take the notes, how to log in and see what their progress is. And the other thing that we do is we do the same for parents. We have a parent night in which Heidi trains them all the same way that we train our kids how to use Edgenuity. Parents then have access to Edgenuity, and everybody gets to be comfortable with it. My feeling is sometimes it takes 9 weeks, sometimes it takes a semester, but we are the support for Edgenuity, and we are the ones who make it so successful because we provide that for the kids so that they aren't lost or falling behind or missing out or any of those problems we have with gaps in education, we're on them, and we make sure that they know what they're doing. And that's half of it with Edgenuity, is you have to know how to be successful at it. So that's one of the things I feel strongly about. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Next slide, please. Heidi, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. I will continue. Thank you, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, and this amazing panel of individuals here. It takes us all. None of us could stand alone and pull this off, but united as a team, enhancing it through technology, through amazing teachers, through curriculum. And we all know the greatest room in any world is the room for improvement. What Cyber Academy gives us is that a little bit more of a solid foundation to build upon. We know from educational research that students in classrooms that use one high-rated curriculum for 4 consecutive years outpace comparisons of students by at least 38 percentile points, which is almost like equivalent of 4 years of learning. So what we can do is within Edgenuity and cyber and the model that we're doing, if we can be consistent with that and do it well, quality still counts, we're increasing the odds of their long-term success. And I know this pandemic has made us kind of put on blinders for short term. What do we have to deal? But we still have to look at that. What are the decisions that we're making now that can impact us in the long run? And so for these secondary considerations, we know that the blended learning students, those 160 that are going to be blended learning, nothing with them is going to change. And I've had parents and I have different people saying, okay, well, I want to bring my kid to cyber next year, but I wanted your normal protocol of how you work with students. That's pretty much going to be the same. We've teased some different ideas of how to meet the needs of our 100% virtual. And we know that the blended is so powerful with those relationships that teachers can do, that we never want to just say, okay, those kids are going to be 100% at home in front of a computer, or teacher's going to be 100% at her home in front of a computer, and not have some sort of opportunity for them to come in and demonstrate authentic learning, as well as demonstrate parent-teacher conferences. We want to make sure we're building on the parent and student involvement. This year, the middle school wants the parents that were involved in the Edgenuity parent portal, where they could see the session logs of knowing when their student logged in and not, exactly the progress, which was just right in time with immediately reflective of how the students were doing. Parents and family units that did that, the students definitely, their work and their body of work was at a higher level, and they usually were properly on the pacing. So we want to make sure that that is continued. We're teasing some ideas about maybe offering Wednesday, since that is our short day anyway, offering Wednesday as a day that we could allow those 100% virtuals to come into cyber. We're not quite sure, because again, we don't know the numbers. We have a lot of those it depends that will allow us to know, finalize and really fill in these puzzle pieces with clarity that we're seeing. So there's a lot of that we can do. And so with that, and Janet pointed on this with elementary too, our enrollment, we're going to have to cap it. That way we can still maintain the quality and make sure that we're doing a good job with the scheduling. We have the right amount of staff on it. We have all the support that we need to magnify the full potential of those students. And we will have a registration. So since we're a school with like 2 different paths, there's going to be a registration for the blended learning, which is our normal way that we've been doing, and with 6th, 7th, 8th graders coming in 2 to 3 times a week, high schoolers 9 to 12 coming in 2 days a week, and then the rest of the learning is done at home. That's been our process for 15 years. We're not going to mess with that very much, other than this potential idea of the Wednesdays. But there's going to be a registration, so a parent would know clearly, am I choosing the blended, or am I going to choose 100% virtual, knowing that we have a decent idea of what that looks like, but the specifics of it may be just a little bit to be identified. And so, of course, depending on that enrollment, we may need to either expand existing program here at Cyber or establish a new virtual middle school. And Dr. Cleveland talked about that in her opening remarks at this meeting, of just knowing we have to adapt to that needs. What encourages us is we have the flexibility, we can adapt from the lessons that we have learned and constantly working forward to it. Next slide, pretty please, thank you. So you can ask us, what is our secondary next steps? Well, the enrollment form, we have to update it. We have our regular one for that blended, and we need it more for that 100% virtual look. We also know it needs to be 100% online, so it's easier to apply and all that kind of stuff. So that needs to happen. And with that application, then parents and students can register. There will be a transfer process for teachers too, as well as the students. If they were supposed to go to Rio Rancho High School, we need to be able to have that proper process when the parents choose either blended or 100%, and then choose how to come to us. And then, of course, from those final numbers, we'll need to transfer any additional allocations to support what we have in place. Next week on April 20th, we will be doing the Parent University, and at that time, adding to what we're saying here with a little bit more clarity, with the underlining knowing that we don't have those exact numbers. So that is definitely something we're waiting on, but we have a good vision of it. I value what Julie said on it. We've done things and we have things in place, and we're going to continue to be successful and build upon what we've done, adapt and work with it. No different than Paul and Terry, and I think Noreen Scott, you mentioned it, technology is always changing. You know, it is. Our tomorrows are always changing, but we're building on what we're learning today. Thank you. I think next slide. Carl, maybe back to you.
I don't think there's another slide,
Oh,
but
okay.
thank you. There was a lot of information. President Galbraith, members of the board, there's a lot of information in front of you, so we would like to entertain questions that you might have, both at elementary for Jana and Rachel, and also at the secondary.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you have anything else, Karl, before I go?
I was going to say, if Dr. Cleveland also, if she might have a few things to say, and certainly answer questions also.
Okay. Yeah, let's start there. Dr. Cleveland, you want to? Would you like to say a few comments before we go to questions?
Let's just go to questions. The only thing else I would say is, if we think it's returned to normal next year, that's not really the reality of what we're looking at. Certainly will continue to be some major changes next year as we look at this particular component of our school program. That being said, I don't think things will ever go back to exactly the way they were before. I think that our whole scope has changed probably on a permanent basis. So go ahead and let the board ask questions, and then maybe I might add something at the end. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. And I think I might have some more. I'll go through the board here in just a second, but I guess that was my biggest question. Is from what I understand, from what is coming down from PED is that we will have to offer a virtual option.
That's correct.
Next year. And so I appreciate all of the hard work that's gone into this. I think as a parent, I definitely see that we need to do something different than what we've done this year. It hasn't worked good. And and a lot of these things, as you talked about, I think resolve a lot of the problems that we're seeing. Of course, we're still going to have some, I think, hiccups, but I appreciate you kind of really thoroughly going over some of those issues that we've seen with parents and with families this year, and kind of using that cyber model to blend in. So one question, Dr. Cleveland, I mean, if we create this, I mean, are we talking, you're saying that, it's probably not, we're not going to ever look the norm that, that we're used to. As we create this, are you thinking it is going to be something, a long-term school that we will just have for generations of time, basically? Is that what we're foreseeing?
I think it's going to be a permanent fixture for our school district. It may look different over time as more and more parents choose to bring their students back. But I think there are some who like it. I was talking to two people today, and one, I want to build on what Heidi said just earlier about He's had 2 children that have gone through cyber. One's there right now. And he talked about how important that social interaction is for his kids. Doesn't want to lose that completely. He thinks that would really be bad for his kids. I think but I also have talked with another parent who is making the decision to keep their child virtual at least through middle school, because they just think that it fits their child's personality and needs better. And so I think people are all over the map. But I do think one of the things that's come out of this is people think a little differently about what the choices are for their children and what works best for their particular child. So I do think we have consumers, and whether we like to admit it or not, we're a school of choice too. And so people have to choose us. And so we want to be able to have the options that parents want so that their children and families will stay in our district, because we want every one of them. We want every single child to be here, and those that left to come back next year. So I think we do have to offer options for families. I think that's probably not going to change.
Okay, thank you. And I'll probably have some more questions possibly in a minute. We're going to go through the board. One little feedback, you guys were talking about Canvas versus Google Classroom. I've heavily used Canvas this year. I was asking my children because they've been using both and what they like, and they actually really enjoy Google Classroom more than Canvas. But so there's just some feedback from a couple individuals in the district, but I think it always takes time to get used to any new online platform. So it can be difficult. So with that, we'll go ahead and go through the board. I think I'll start with Wynn Coleman, if she would like to give any questions or comments.
I don't at this point, but just thank you for all the effort and just putting this together, troubleshooting, anticipating things. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary Scott?
Julie, I felt like you made a really good point about Edgenuity, that we need an orientation for folks. And I think that was one of the challenges in the first semester, that we didn't have a really good on-ramp to Edgenuity. And I hope that as you lay this out, we kind of give parents and children the opportunity to know what they're doing with that platform a little better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think that the on-ramp concept is something that we focus on at Cyber Academy for our blended kids. So it wouldn't be any different for the 100% virtual kids as well. In fact, their advisors would be trained to train. So that's the concept we're looking at.
And just a comment to Karl, you were going to get some numbers to us on the failure rate of the first semester, and we haven't seen that. So if you would get that to us, we'd appreciate it. I'm sorry, Dr. Cleveland, I think I might have cut you off.
No, that's okay. I jumped in on your conversation, but I can add 2 quick things. One, the reason we didn't present it tonight is that Renee is out of town. Her son is getting married, and so she's gone this week, and so that's why we held it, was for her to be able to be here when that's presented. So we plan to present it at the next board meeting, and it was inconvenient of her son to get married this week, but they don't generally ask us what's convenient for us, and so she'll be back. And I really think that certainly Karl could give you that information, but Renee can also give you some insight that would be very useful. So that's why it's delayed. It's wedding time this week, and so I wanted to jump in and just add that. The other is I've not done it, so I have to rely on Julie and Heidi. But what they've told me over a long period of time is, even with the orientation, even with all the support, really takes students almost a semester. For some, they pick it up the first quarter. Some don't quite get it until the semester. And so the challenge was that we didn't have that time. We just had to get in it and start moving with it. But even in the very best of circumstances, kids don't just take to it overnight. There's a lot you have to learn about the intricacies of how it works and the training and support. And so we put our middle school teachers in a really difficult situation because they didn't have that training. And at least at cyber, those teachers are highly trained in how to orient students to Edgenuity. So we didn't have the teachers who were trained. The only folks who were trained and came over and gave a lot of support were the cyber teachers who tried to help their colleagues. But it was crash course, boot camp kind of thing for Edgenuity. And so by second semester, we started seeing our students know how to do it, how to manage their time, how to get better at it. So it is a learning curve. And when you sign on for cyber, you're going to be there, for several years. And that it is just a very difficult situation. But that being said, our middle school teachers tried really hard. And Heidi and Julie and the staff over there gave them all the support they could, while not neglecting their own students and their own classrooms.
Well, I didn't mean that as a criticism. I just felt that Julie really hit it right on the head about the need to do orientation. And everybody knows we had no on-ramp for virtual school. And so we were on top of it as much as we could. But I do think that that's important for parents to hear, that there is some training and some onboarding that our students can get and will get.
All right, thank you. And then Catherine Cullen.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the agenda tonight, and it looks like it's being presented as a report, plus you also want an action on rather approving this tonight. And there seems to be a lot of unknowns, particularly in the budget. I mean, tremendous amount of unknowns where we're looking at for our final budget. Typically, when we open up another school, we're given a bit more time than just one meeting for a presentation and voting on it. So I'm a bit concerned that that's on there tonight. I understand obviously the pressure to get this done. We have PED that is telling us that we must be able to provide virtual, but this was just presented us this evening, and we still have a lot of unknowns. Failure rates, I think, is a big unknown, because when we start putting these children into 100% virtual, I'd like to know how some of them had also been able to do it this year, and if they choose to go to 100%. I am a big fan of Cyber Academy, and I hear Julie. We've tried to expand. We've looked at trying to expand cyber for years because they usually have quite a wait list. And now we're sticking another 700 students over there at cyber projection wise. So, I think this was, for me at least, this was a lot of information, and then it looks to make that decision tonight with some unknowns. But I'm thinking, what is it, elementary? You said about 500 children, Jenna? Sorry, it feels like I'm talking to myself. I have to say, it's so weird with these headphones on, so I apologize if I talk different.
Yes, Board Member Cullen, at this time, it was around 571 with another 500 that didn't respond to our survey that are currently virtual.
Okay. So, is that correct, Dr. Cleveland? You're needing an answer tonight so that you guys can go to Parent University for April 20th and then start getting registration?
And let me, and again, Jana and Karl jump in, and add what you think should be said. I think the biggest challenge is that, number one, we didn't know the state was going to require it until just short time ago. That being said, we've been thinking about it for a long time, but the fact that it's now required, we know we have to move forward. You remember the presentation that Renee did on the master schedule and the time it takes to put a master schedule together. Usually by the middle of April, it's already done. I mean, we are already registered in classes. And the other piece that is critical for us is trying to get this out and get the parents to confirm one way or the other, because we've got to staff it. And so until we know what the enrollment looks like, we can't staff it. So you're exactly right. The timeline is pretty absurd, to be just really honest. But I am afraid if we wait until the 1st of May, it's going to be very hard to get all of the work done that has to be done to open those schools. Another thing we've got to do is we've got to apply to the state for additional school or schools. And we're already past the deadline for that. We're assuming that the state will open it up, given the fact that they kind of helped create this situation. But you have to apply for a school, and we can't apply until the board's approved it.
Well, how's
So
the other
there's just a lot of things we've got to jump over. That's okay. I have to jump over to get there by the fall. We're really nervous that we're just so far behind the curve now. And again, that's not it's not a fault of anyone's. It's just we didn't know until what was it, maybe 2 weeks ago, that if even that long, that we were going to be required to offer. And I forget who mentioned it, so I'm sorry. But that I think it was Jana, that the state has determined that the better approach to go is the school. And so that also gave us a little bit of a push going one way rather than to trying to replicate that program at every building. But honestly, I don't think we can afford it. And I really don't think that you can do it without asking teachers to do both assignments. And I tell you, and this isn't coming from me. This is coming just from good feedback from teachers and from the union, but they just believe we're going to lose a significant number of people if we continue to ask them to do both jobs. And so, that the number one request I've heard from them is please look at this dual responsibility for teachers, because it's just so hard to do. And parents also have indicated their frustration. Their child has to share that teacher's attention, regardless of which side you're on. Jana, what would you add? And Karl, what would you add to that?
Well, you're exactly right. We're not living in typical times, right? Member Cullen, this is not the typical, we've opened a lot of schools over the years, Dr. Cleveland. I mean, I can't even count them on, there's a lot, we've opened a lot of schools. So this is not typical. We would definitely, just like Joe Harris, we had a code, that whole process. But one thing that is needed is staffing, obviously, and you saw the presentation from Renee, and one issue is that funding flows with the student. So when you see these big numbers, obviously, the sooner we can identify and really clarify for parents, what is this? What does this look like? What am I signing up for? I really want this. Pick the cyber. We have a drop-down menu where we're looking at, do you want blended or 100% virtual? And you're right, there's more parent choice in this opening. When you think about this school, it's not the typical, but nothing this year has been typical. I mean, if you really think about it, we've learned as we've gone. But one thing we do know is that we want to be really clear before we go out to parents at Parent University, so that they understand when they're signing up for that school what the expectations are. So we've gone over that tonight, but I don't think we could wait much longer. The other thing we do know is that if we also have an opportunity here to bring in students that aren't even in our attendance numbers we're looking at here tonight. In other words, we know there are probably 400 to 500 homeschool parents right now out there, maybe more. And I do think they're looking for this kind of a option, a choice at the elementary. They're looking for those types of, to be the teacher, work with the teacher in that partnership. And I started a family school program in Chandler Hills years and years ago through a statute. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of that. So I do think it gives us that opportunity, but I do think we've come to you tonight saying, well, we have these preliminary numbers. We want to get better numbers, but we need the option here. Do the timeline to either build a program out at the elementary or secondary. I know the elementary is a school we're talking about, or open a school. So I think having an option is helpful for us. And as we look at staffing other schools, definitely important to do that now. So I think you definitely, there are a lot of unknowns, the number of staff you need. Can we use existing staff in a different way? And you're right, the budget's tight this year. It was a late session, we had a 60-day session, and it's been a tough year. So I can see why you'd be concerned about that. But I want to say that I think we definitely would staff based on students, the number of students we get actually that register and we're ready to go into those schools or those programs.
I would just add
Madam
one thing,
President.
and I'd like Janet to have a chance to say something just real quickly. And in the presentation, I sure wanted to be sure we had not left the impression with the board that with the staffing information, some of those will come from existing schools. Some won't. Your specialist won't come because you have to have that person at every school, for example, a counselor or whatever. So some of those, with the opening of a new school, there are some new people that are going to cost money. Teachers, on the other hand, will pretty much follow kids. It won't be perfect. It won't be perfect at all. Never is when we open a new school. Many of those teachers are already in our district, already on our payroll, and will move to a new location. So those are the elementary that are choosing to be virtual. They're virtual teachers now. It's a little more complex at the secondary level. First, we will need some additional staff, but I anticipate some of our staff will apply to go to cyber, and especially those that have enjoyed the virtual teaching this last year. So I just wanted to be sure that that's the cost for that site, but some of those costs are offset by moving the personnel, but not all of them are. And so you're going to have, if you have a new principal, you have a new principal. That's an additional cost. Does that make sense? The other, and again, we're kind of nervous about this. We're not bringing you a finished product. Really, what we're looking at is now to go out and gauge parent interest, and then to kind of go back and refine what we have here tonight. So, but we have to know. I mean, we can't build a program if we don't know how many kids are truly interested in going, and try to get some pretty firm numbers.
But to me, it's not a program. It's actually getting another school. And I mean, I know what you're saying. My question is, what are other school districts doing? Because you're saying that we just knew about this for a couple of weeks. So we are having to come up with this and get the number, the ID number for the school and all that. I mean, I believe APS already has 100% virtual charter, or maybe even just a program within their school district. But with all the other districts across the state, and you're saying that we need to get this done now, and I understand why. I mean, I know how this is how PED has been. It's unfortunate, but this is what's been going on, and it's at no fault of you guys whatsoever. And I put it squarely on the state because this is what's been going on. But I'd like to know what other districts are doing on how they're going to get this done, because I just can't imagine they could put a school together by what PED's suggestion is.
I did talk with Scott Elder about the high schools in APS. They're going to remain very firm that if you are not in person at that high school, you do need to transfer to the all virtual high school and become a student of that school. So they will not be running the duplicate. But as you said, they already have a school they've worked on, and they think it's been pretty successful. Las Cruces already have a full-time, I believe, K through 12 virtual school, which I assume they'll be expanding, but I haven't talked to them, so I don't know. Some of the smaller districts are looking at collaboratives through the regional service centers. So I think it will, just like everything else, it will look different by individual districts. We did meet with, I did with 4 other superintendents to talk about virtual education, and the states thought about putting in a statewide academy, cyber academy. They did that several years ago. It was not successful. It was just not very good, and I think it's because they didn't have the funding, the support. But you can't. It's just hard to run it without a school, and so that's exactly what they did. Is they ran it without a school, and it did not work out very well. And so in our conversations, for example, Dennis Roush is from a very small district, and Dennis was on it, and there were, it was a very good group, and just the unanimous recommendation, big, medium, small school districts, was we want to leave it up to each individual district to create their own model that meets the needs of their community, and not to do a statewide cyber, because we just don't feel it will deliver the product that we would like to have. There may be some small districts that would like a statewide cyber because it would alleviate them of having to deal with that. But, there was just no recommendation. So the feedback we got at the end of the session was the state was not planning to move forward with the state cyber. It would be left either to regions, like regional service centers, or to individual districts.
And cyber has been so successful because they do have that blended or hybrid type model where they can still see the students. So of course, I just have some reservations on making this decision tonight. I understand the reason, but I mean, cyber's been extremely successful. We talked about expanding it. I mean, I remember when we talked about doing a magnet stool before, and we had a lot of discussion. I guess for me, my hang up is let's make a decision tonight after just hearing it this afternoon, and then PED just giving us a couple of weeks for that determination. But I shouldn't expect anything less from the state at this point. But thank you, I appreciate it, and I'm glad to hear that the way that they're looking at doing the schools, it's needed. I think that we've seen that across for a number of years. A lot of parents are going through K through 12, and I do believe, Karl, that what you're saying is homeschoolers. I think that this can really help with that need, bring some of those those kiddos back into our district that has been there. I just don't like the timeline and really the uncertainty of our finances this year. I mean, everything's so delayed. It usually is delayed, but the last couple of years they seem like it's continuously delayed on what our finances are going to be. So it's just really a tough decision. But thank you.
Janet, did you want to add anything? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
One other thing, I guess I would just say in general, is that I really hope when parents look at cyber, they look at it for the right reason. And I know in our discussions about an elementary cyber, Janet made a very compelling case for why the very smallest should really, really benefit from being there in person. And so I think back of my own kids, and I think how sad I would be to have given up their kindergarten year in person, and what that meant to them, and how hard it would be to replicate that. But on the other side, who am I to tell parents what's in the best interest of their children? And so I know that I know that that's not my role or our role, but I really hope parents will look at the why, and what is it that makes it a really good fit for their children. But the one I think we have expressed a lot of concern about are some of those youngest kids who do benefit from that person-to-person interaction, and learning to come to school, and learning to be with other children, and be with an adult other than mommy and daddy. And I know it's going to be a very hard decision for a lot of our parents to make.
And
Dr. Cleveland, can I say one thing that might help the public out there in the community with the secondary is that in the original survey, parents really didn't know that they would disenroll from their home school. And I think that they maybe just thought, oh, I want to continue as is in this virtual environment. And no, I think we just need to be really clear on the 20th and make sure we describe how we deliver the curriculum. It's a great program. We cap it. I've spoken with Julie and Heidi. I mean, we don't think 700 and some students will want that program. And it may not be a school, but I think that action tonight was more about, it could be depending on the number of students who actually want face-to-face, because virtual, you really don't need a space, a building. You do need personnel, but having talked with Julie Arnold, I think we really could expand the cyber and then look at a school at the elementary level. And I don't know, I can't predict what the numbers are going to look like, but I think parents, once they hear that they will disenroll from their high school or whatever the case may be. That may not be an option they decide to move forward with. But we definitely want them to be successful, and that's why, Dr. Cleveland, to be candid, Ideal New Mexico, we created our own cyber. We created our own school, and they spent time across the street with us as we started to create the cyber school. And so that was the state school, virtual school. So I think we've been very successful. We want to maintain that with our cyber academy, but then we learned a lot from Google Classroom this year, how we can support our students in even a better way at the cyber academy. So I think actually what we have is a really good model for instructional delivery, and we have great teachers. So I think professional development, Secretary Scott, I think that was part of it also, is just were the teachers ready, the parents ready for the middle school Edgenuity program or the high school. And I think we learned a lot this year, and we can really build a program that will meet the needs of a lot of students.
They can't, however, and I sure, we've certainly been encouraged to make it very clear the students can participate in extracurricular, and that is still an option for them. And so that also is requiring our thinking about what does that mean in terms of schedules? What does that mean in terms of, getting kids there in time? And so that's another big hurdle, which is different. They could do it before, but I really anticipate if the school grows significantly in numbers, there may be more students wanting to do just that. So we're also going to have to think about how we facilitate that. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge as well. And students would, of course, have to have their own transportation to be able to do that, because we lack the ability to transport students.
Okay. Go ahead,
Well,
Kathy.
I was just going to say that, no, I agree with you, Dr. Cleveland, with the younger ones. There is something to be said to be in the classrooms. The secondary level is certainly, because cyber has been so successful at that grade level. But the kiddos, they'll have to be definitely, if they're not coming in and getting check-ins within the building, that's going to be tough. So I did like the plan of being able to bring some of them in. But the other thing is that we are going to have to look at, if this is approved tonight, in the secondary level, like we said, if you're going to have to create another middle school, and that's very problematic because we have no space. And and once we start down this journey, we've got to really think about that as long term. If this is successful and they want to do that, we couldn't grow cyber because where they're at, and financially, can we grow this program if we want? And that's something that we will have to look at if this is approved.
We might consider Rio Rancho Middle. That's just one possibility. There's some pluses to that, but there's also some drawbacks to it. And so, that's certainly no decision has been made at all. If it was not there, you're correct. There is really no additional space left, short of finding and renting a facility in Rio Rancho. So that is a challenge, and not a small one at all.
So with that, I'd like to go over to Noreen Scott and then Wynn Coleman. They have a couple more comments. And
I guess at this point, I'm in favor of going with your model that you've laid out, because it seems to me if parents are making a choice, they're making a choice in the best interest of their child, and everybody learns differently with different formats. And I think if our kids had a choice, virtual or in person, at the beginning, we wouldn't have had the failure rate challenges that we had, because parents are going to choose in my opinion, what's going to be best for their students. So I guess I weigh in on the side of let's go forward. Let's move forward. You've given a great deal of thought to this. Let's just make it happen.
okay, thank you, Secretary Scott. And then Wynn Coleman.
I need clarification on the parent university. Is that to just tell them what we're planning on doing?
Yes, we would be going over the actual program curriculum, how it's delivered, and then the expectation for students, staff, and parents. So I think that would be absolutely critical, and answer questions and be very clear on the schedule, because I'm going to want to know the schedule if I'm a parent, and what that looks like. Are there any other things you were thinking about, Jana, or go ahead? I'm sorry, Wynn. Go ahead.
So then at that point, are they going to be able to make a decision?
Yeah, yes, definitely. In fact, that would be the best time to make the decision and answer questions. And what's interesting, when we opened the cyber, it was a mandatory orientation, and there was an action orientation student by student. It was an individual conference. So I definitely maybe will need a follow-up to that real quickly when Member Coleman, because we definitely want to be able to answer questions and get the information out and make it very clear. The pre-enrollment form, we're working on that, which is a really good document. I know that Jana, you might want to talk about what you're doing at the elementary for the compact. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Board Member Coleman, we were discussing possibly, if this was approved tonight, to send out, we've been working on a tentative application for families who are interested to start filling that out even this week, so we could get an idea of interest and how many families would be interested, and then be able to invite anybody who's interested to that April 20th meeting so they can get their questions answered. We are focusing on really, and Rachel, feel free to join in, attendance and making sure, looking at attendance this year, that we have good candidates for the program. We are concerned about some of our students that we haven't seen and they don't turn on their cameras and meets, and we're concerned some of them might ask for virtual next year. And so we want to make sure to have conversations with those families that we would really like them to come in, especially if the students have needs. So we have some situations like that. And then Rachel, what was the, I know there's one other component I'm missing.
Board Member Coleman, to answer your question, we did want to also focus on what that parent partnership would look like. So going through what that learning compact looks like, what the teacher role would be, what the parent role would be, and then how that communication would go forward. And then also looking at, like Karl said, about the schedule, what they would expect. So how much in-person instruction, because we think that that's extremely important in the elementary setting to have that teacher time, what the support would look like during independent tasks. So having the teacher available whenever students are doing any sort of independent task, and making sure that families know what to expect with the program. And then having layers of support for those families that maybe struggled with attendance or work completion in this, what we did this year, and making sure that they know what kind of levels of support we would provide, and what we would expect of them to help improve that attendance if we saw that being an issue.
We also talked about videotaping some of our current virtual teachers who are interested in the program, so we could show parents a little bit about what, I'm sure if they're already invested, they have an idea, but for those who are wondering, because we'd open it to everybody, we'd want them to know.
And I guess I'm wondering, as you have looked at forming this, I appreciate that there's been a survey sent out. What I'm wondering though, and what I really think would be very important, is that you're engaging parents on a level more than a survey as you're trying to kind of get this up and going. I'm a little uncomfortable at this point approving and with such short notice, and that I'm not hearing that you've received that input that I think could be really, really helpful.
Board Member Coleman, we've had principals have told us that parents have reached out to them and asked if we're going to have a virtual option. They aren't planning on enrolling in our schools unless we do. So we do know that principals have heard directly from parents, and they've had questions about whether or not we've had an option. We're currently losing one of our own staff members to another school because we don't have a virtual option. And so she's leaving with her children at this point because she needed to make a decision for her family. So although we haven't had a wide scale, the principals we meet every week, and they were really behind this decision for a school because they've heard from parents and they're concerned about additional parents leaving. But that's as far as we've engaged.
I think one other thing too is once we'll ask parents to fill an application, and they'll do the parent university, and then they'll be asked to make a firm commitment. So I think, it's not when you sign this application, you've signed your commitment yet, that you're signing your life away, but it's really to just say, okay, we're really interested and we want more information. I think the kind of communication and discussion, Board Member Coleman, that you're wanting to see may be more powerful once those families have committed to the school and the principal knows who they are, and then in a attempt they go together and pull together to create the program. That's kind of hard to do with people at large in a large community. We saw that years ago with Karl's family school. And that was truly a collaborative effort between the parents and the school administration to create a learning environment that met those children's needs. So realistically, it may be that work would best be done once those parents have said, I'm in and I'm going to do this. And then those conversations really began in earnest. The only downside is maybe there might have been a few more that might have come on if they had known a little more about it. So I can see both sides, but I do think that a lot of folks will have to have a final deadline. This application is not the final deadline, because we don't want them to go if they're not happy with it, if they don't think it's going to work for their children. We want them to be absolutely sure that this is what they want when that final decision is being made.
Wynn, do you have anything else on that?
I know. So I'm trying to wear all different hats. So of course, I also wonder about the mental health of our students, and wondering about if we're really prepared, because they're going to, we're really looking at making a shift, a big shift. And so I guess what I'm really wondering is, are we in a position to have a person that's dedicated specifically to the emotional well-being of students, both in person and virtual, and my concern about where that falls right now and all that responsibility, along with all these other things. And so I don't know if that can be addressed, if that's something that's being looked at. I just think that we're already dealing with that and seeing the ramifications of what the pandemic has caused. I'm just wondering now, if we're introducing another quote unquote school, that we're also putting more of these circumstances on one person's plate, or a small number of people.
I would just add one quick thought about that. It's just to be really honest, I don't think we can make them come. And so if we don't offer them a choice for virtual, my concern is that they won't come at all. And we won't have those children and their families in our district. And so I don't want to lose those kids and families. And it's not just for financial. It's because they are part of our school district and they're part of our community. We want them in our schools. We want their children in our schools. And so I think that Jana made the comment that some of the parents have already said, you don't offer this, we're going somewhere else. And so I don't, I think we're past that conversation now. I think, as I said earlier, parents now believe that they should have the choice of their children being virtual or in person. And I really don't think that it's our call to make that decision for them. And so I think if we don't offer it, we'll lose some of these kids and families to other districts, to charter schools, to private schools, and homeschools. And I do see the virtual Karl alluded to earlier, virtual is perhaps the bridge to homeschool. And, for those parents who want their children at home, and some do, and they love that role and want to be part of that, this offers them a way to do both, to have the district support, but also to maintain their children in a home environment if that's what they as parents have chosen to do.
And Board Member Coleman, to your point, that is one of our biggest worries with elementary is the kids who are virtual and might not be getting the support that they need, which is why we want to be able to have conversations with families that if we're not seeing their child and they're not attending, that we need them to come in person. Students that are really successful have their parents there and they're showing up, but we know that we have some students that, we aren't seeing all the time. So that is one of the components of the program that we want to be able to reinforce is we want to be able to see your kid. We want them to show up. And then engaging parents. The other thing I wanted to mention is with our task force work that the task force have been doing, we do have parents on all of those communities, those meetings as well. So that is one other way that we are trying to engage our parents in this process moving forward. But I hear your concern, and I know that at the elementary, we've had that across the board this year with students, and we're concerned as well.
Could I ask that maybe Julie and Heidi, how we currently do that? We have a model currently that's very successful at cyber in engaging kids who are not engaged. How would that look as we expand that? Julie, do you want to talk about how you do it now? Because we're very successful at it.
Yeah, Heidi and I are rock, paper, scissors. Sorry. So the current way that we do it is we have advisory. And I think that the advisory piece is the piece that's going to hold all the kids together at Cyber Academy. And we are requiring of the 100% virtual that the students have an advisory teacher and that the advisory teacher meets with them an hour to an hour and a half a week, if not more. I spoke with my counselor just today, and one of the things that she told me is several of our students that need the more emotional than social learning from the counselor themselves have reached out to her more because there's more of a privacy factor going on with the use of the counselor right now. So I feel like we have a lot of things that are helping our students not fall through the cracks and that are helping them be successful. So one of the other things that we've learned through the pandemic that I feel really strongly about, and I'm going to use Patty Wormington as an example, when we have a math class in our building, the students are lined up to see Patty, and Patty is pressed for time to meet with each of these kids. They're waiting in line or they've signed up on a clipboard. They're all waiting for Miss Patty to help them with math. One of the things that's come out of the pandemic is these kids have privacy over Google Meets. And these kids have the opportunity to meet with Patty longer than they would if another child is interrupting, saying, wait, my turn, my turn, my turn. And so, I think that there have been very positive things at Cyber Academy that have come from the pandemic, learning how to use the Google Classroom, implementing it into the blended, making sure the students aren't getting lost because they're not in our building, reaching out through advisory. There are a lot of things that we've been doing, but I think those are key pieces to our success.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And I see that Catherine has her hand up, but really quick, and this is, I have 4 kids in the district. I will say that our current way of doing things is not sustainable, not for our families and not for our teachers. Right now, if they are at home learning, their teacher is struggling, and I teach and have kids on my my meet. The worst thing is when those kids leave, and I go, wow, I didn't even really talk to my kids who were on and I do through Zoom on my Zoom. Like I feel like a failure as a teacher. Those kids, my daughter's in quarantine this week. She hates it because she's like, I can't hear what's happening really. I just don't feel like I'm getting everything that I need. And for her, like mentally, it's not a good situation. And so it is a fast thing that we have to do, unfortunately. But I was really pleased to see it because what we are doing isn't sustainable, and not because everyone hasn't been doing their best. Everyone is doing their best to make it work, but we need to try something new, and we need to do something different to meet the needs of those kids. And our teachers are stressed, and it is as a teacher, it you feel like you got it down and then you don't, and you leave a class and you feel sad that you just couldn't do anything. And I had one day my technology didn't work, and I had put on my phone, and then I realized I sat in front of my phone the whole time and they couldn't see me. And so those are the things that we're dealing with, and we need to do something different, and it is unfortunate it's last minute. But I do think actually for the mental of our students, for our families, for our teachers, we gotta try something new. And I'm really pleased with what you've come up with here. One other thing that we need to be really forward thinking on, and you guys are, and so you're probably already thinking about it, as I have one of my children in quarantine this week. She's fine, but is that when we are still going to have kids who go into quarantine next year if those rules don't change. And so we are still going to have kids who are going to have to do it like we do it this year. And so I don't know what we can do, but we got to figure out something too for that as those kids go into quarantine, if the rules don't change from PED, and how we can help to engage them better, because it's mentally on them. It's really hard to go through those things. So I do want to let Catherine go ahead and give her last questions. If you want to go ahead and do that, Catherine.
Thank you. I did have a question for the 100% virtual for special services. There's certain services that would pretty much need to be done in person, and how is that going to be handled if they're 100% virtual? I mean, I know that was kind of the issue that we had during the pandemic, because we did have to bring some of them into, we had to bring them back into the school to be able to get their services.
Board Member Cole and I can speak for elementary. It would depend on the level and the need of the student, but there are some services that they could get virtually. So our plan would be to offer those services virtually. As far as evaluations or, that could be done in person. But we were planning on having special providers that would specifically do online or virtual services to those students. The other thing that we forgot to mention that we need to bring up is for testing. A lot of the testing has to be in person, so our students would have to come in for testing. So we have that requirement to meet too. We've worked with RADA or talked to RADA about that. But our plan was to have their services be virtual. However, when I spoke with Jerry this morning, we really need to look at the extent of their services. A lot of that will go through IEP as to whether or not they can get what they need. So that's going to all depend on how many students we have who are special need. And so, yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months.
Be kind of a challenge on some of those things with some of those special services. Okay, thank you.
Well, and I'm going to second Jana.
Are very attuned to what their children need. And so I think in most cases, parents of children with disabilities give very careful consideration to where their children need to be to get the best services for them. And there's two quick things. We had a youngster a couple of years ago that had almost no immune system whatsoever. It was just, anything was really serious. And so I haven't talked to that family now for a couple of years, but I kind of wondered what happened this year. And I suspect they were glad to keep the child home and get services so they would not be exposed to some of the things that he might catch. We also have, and just so you're aware of it, we have had even this year where some of our staff have gone to the home. They don't go in the home, but they meet with the family. And I can give you one example. Some of our children with visual disabilities, they go to the home and they do the walking, the cane training, and all of that outside the home. And so there have been some cases where it's been pretty successful. But to your point, I do think many of our children with disabilities, their parents will choose to bring them in. They did for the small groups. Those were the first kids to be serviced. And we had large numbers that did show up to take advantage of those services. So I agree with you. I think in general, many of our children do need to be there. I do believe their parents will make that choice because they know what their child needs. Just one other quick thing back to cyber. I know of a young man that They worked very hard to get to graduate when nobody else in the world thought he would ever graduate. But he had high, serious emotional needs. I mean, really had really serious challenges. And they met those challenges for that young man. And honestly, I don't think he could have ever graduated in a comprehensive high school. I just don't think he could have. And so the love and compassion that he was shown there helped him get through. And I think sometimes we forget that extra small class, small touch for some kids who can't handle the drama of larger schools. It's a great option for them. So we have had kids with serious needs that have gone through cyber, and their needs have been met very well, very successfully.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. And then Julie, I know you were going to say something. Do you want to add real quick?
I was just going to echo Jana. So it's going to look similar in secondary as to exactly what Jana has said. So I was just going to echo. So we're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and as we're looking at this, and we're going to vote on in a few minutes as we get into business. Our parents they're going into it with their eyes wide open. We've been doing this for the last year. They've been using Edgenuity and Google Classroom, and it may look a little different than what they were thinking, but I think that we've had that many people who say that they're still interested. Kind of knowing what we've been doing this last year is a sign of the need in our district. And we know that those numbers can change, but we are seeing a significant number with everything that we've been doing already this year. So, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your report. And as I said, in a few minutes, as we get into business, um, we will vote on this. And so, but I do want to thank, I know it's a lot of hard work, and I'm amazed, like, as you said, it's pretty short. Like, we haven't had a lot of time to go through this, and you have done an amazing job at looking at all the different aspects of it. So thank you. Okay, we will look at approving the consent agenda. After we approve that consent agenda or go through that, I'd like to just have a 5-minute recess just to let everyone kind of clear their heads before we go into the business today, and to get a moment to walk around for a second. So with item I, to approve the consent agenda, are there any questions or anything that needs to be pulled off of the consent agenda?
This is Secretary Scott. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second?
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I second.
Okay. We have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Catherine Cullen. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, ma'am. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
4-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. We will now take a 5-minute break. We'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Not in terms of voting, but just in terms of information, we'll try to reach out to Jeff and try to bring him up to speed. I got a couple of people on the staff try to contact him and try to bring him up to speed so he at least knows what's going on. Obviously, can't vote, but do want him to be part of the conversation and know what the discussion has been tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. All right, we are now back in, so we'll move into our business portion. We'll start with item A to consider the approval of the March 29th, 2021 special board meeting unapproved minutes. Any changes that anyone noticed need to be made to those unapproved minutes?
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I make a motion to approve.
This is Board Member Coleman. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Catherine Cullen and a second by Wynn Coleman. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay.
I can. We can hear
you. That's good. Okay. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
4-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Oops, write that down. Okay. So now for item B is based off of our reports to consider approving, and we have opportunity to discuss here, but to consider approving the establishment of a new virtual elementary school to commence operations for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to present anything, or should we just go into any further discussion? I know we just talked about it, so. She's muted, but I think she's saying it's okay. Go ahead and.
I would like to make a motion to approve the establishment of a new virtual elementary school to commence operations in 2021-22.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there any further discussion from our other board members or questions that you feel that you need to have answered as we took a moment to kind of think about it for a moment? Okay. Do I have a second?
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I'll go ahead and second.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, we have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Catherine Cullen. Kim, can you go ahead and take a roll call vote on this?
Yes, ma'am. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes, and I do want it noted that I was never opposed to this. There were just questions that I had, and getting this when we did, I in no way want it to be perceived that I'm not in support of it. I understand. So.
Okay, thank you. President Galbraith.
Yes.
Vote is 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. And thank you, Wynn. And I think that we all are understanding where it is. It is stressful to make these decisions in this way, kind of so quickly. I feel it's unfortunate that we're living in this time, and we never feel like we have enough time to really go over these things. And so I totally saw that's what you were feeling. And so so please don't in any way feel that way, that you were looked other way. So.
I feel very fortunate President Galbraith, that we have two seasoned board members who ask really good questions. And so, Wynn, thank you for that. And Catherine as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else before we move on to our next item? Okay, thank you. All right, so for item C is to consider approving the expansion of a virtual middle school programs and or establishing a new virtual middle school to commence operations for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there any further discussion, questions that anyone has as we make this decision? Hold on one second, Noreen Scott. I think Dr. Cleveland, I can see, has something, and I would like for her to go ahead. You're still muted, Dr. Cleveland. It's okay.
I had to turn it off. The difference between the two would be dependent upon the numbers of students who sign up. And I just want that to be clear. That's why it's one or the other. It is dependent upon enrollment. And so that's, if it's a larger number, obviously we would have to look at another option. If it's a small number, then it would probably be handled through cyber as it currently exists. But we don't know those numbers.
This is Secretary Scott. I'd like to move to consider approving the expansion of the virtual middle school program and or establishing a new virtual middle school to commence operations for 2021-22, understanding that the Cyber Academy might well play a large role in that.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Okay. I will second the expansion of the I will second the motion. to add for what? Okay. Hold on, Catherine. No one can hear you but me because I'm sitting next to you.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking that we should do an amendment, basically, because Dr. Cleveland was saying if we had the enrollment numbers, because otherwise it will be handled through cyber. So, and I think that we kind of need to be clear on that, because if we approve this like that, you know, then we'll have to have another facility, all that type of things with middle school. So I think it almost, with the way Dr. Cleveland was just saying, it's dependent on the numbers. So I think it does need to have an amendment. Let me look at it again.
I think the staff would very much prefer you to leave it up to them to come back to you with another proposal once we know the numbers, rather than dictate what that might be to them, but definitely to bring it back for your consideration.
Okay. Do you feel?
No, and I do see the and or now. I didn't see the and or, so that was my concern, because I thought we were just approving the expansion of the virtual middle school.
Yeah. So, and I believe that Noreen read out the and or. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and I second the motion. Okay. I'm like, wait, where am I? What have we done? Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us on this?
Yes, ma'am. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
4-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Okay, for our next is to consider the approval of English language arts grades 9 through 12 and world languages instructional materials adoption recommendations. We have a discussion and action on this. So Karl Loppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, is here. Suzanne Wynn, our Executive Director of Federal, Bilingual, and Native American Programs, and also Kristen Oliver and Kelly Pierce, our District Curriculum and Instruction Coordinators.
Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. This is one of the most important things we do, just behind hiring a great, talented teacher, obviously, to use these materials. And as a district, we are an outstanding district because of the work we do, because of our staff, and also selecting great materials for our staff. So we'll proceed. Next slide, please. And before we do, I want to introduce, we do have a couple, the people, well, I'm sorry, you did the introduction, so I apologize for that. You've seen this slide before. It's used a lot, but I think there are two key factors here. Bob Marzano, Dr. Bob Marzano, who is 25 plus years of research in curriculum instruction, has said there are two major factors around high achievement and all students learning. That is the alignment between the written, taught, and assessed curriculum. And that first part is the opportunity to learn, that first factor. And without that alignment, and without high standards, then students won't learn. And so that's very critical, that learning, if I had another visual here, I'd have a rectangle at the bottom talking about student learning, teaching and student learning. The other factor really is time. Do we have time in the school day and instructional day, enough adequate time to cover the curriculum that we actually want students to learn, but learn well with proficiency and be able to apply that knowledge, those skills and aptitudes? And so I think what we found out is sometimes we don't have time. And this year has been really a challenge, has it not? That have students really had the time. Last spring, we know they didn't. And as a result, students, what? They have learning gaps. It's a schooling gap. It's not just the learning, the actual academic, cognitive, it's also the social emotional learning. So I think when we talk tonight, this is a critical decision we make tonight. And as you know how I certainly always say we need to fund these materials, and thank you to the board in the past for always funding them, and Dr. Cleveland for supporting that. So next slide, please. And again, I'm not going to read the slide, but it really truly is, we have some talented staff who are highly qualified, but we need to put the most quality instruction materials in the hands of those teachers, and those that have really been vetted, because assignments matter, the rigor of the assignment matters, and the core of the instruction matters. So I think that we got to make sure that in instruction in every classroom, that all students have an opportunity to learn, because there's good quality instruction as well as materials. And I do believe I have one more slide here. Is that correct? Okay. So the primary expectations of our committee members have always been to be objective. Sometimes it's hard because there's certain materials that we like so dearly, and sometimes public people who publish these materials really make them sound great. But when you dig in, you look at it and say, oh, this is not on standard. This is not going to work. I think also leaders, they must act as leaders, a school, a liaison, a voice for the school, a stakeholder in those schools, and disseminate the information back and forth. And we have great teachers, very talented teachers that sit on these committees. And by the way, they're doing it on their own time. They're doing it beyond their instructional time. And think about it during a pandemic with everything going on, that they've really worked hard to make sure we bring good materials to you as a board. And then, of course, today, finalize recommendations to the superintendent and to the board. Next slide. And this is just merely give you some food for thought going forward. This year is the 9 through 12 English language arts and the world languages. And you can see this will be something to look forward in the future. It's a cycle, 6-year cycle. I won't go through it, but it sort of gives you that timeline as we're going to next year, K-8 English language arts. And see, one of our favorite topics is structured literacy coming in next year, and that's good timing. So I won't go through that chart, but I think that gives you something to look at going forward. Okay, Kristen Oliver is our talented English 9 through 12 District Curriculum Instruction Coordinator. Phenomenal teacher, by the way, and great facilitator. Have sat in on the sessions, and it's amazing the amount of work it takes to get to a decision, a consensus. And Kristen's done a great job with that. So I'll turn it over to Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, Karl. I'm humbled. President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, good evening. And as Karl mentioned, my name is Kristen Oliver. I'm one of the secondary curriculum and instruction coordinators, and I do have the distinct privilege of primarily supporting our secondary English language arts team and getting to facilitate this adoption process this year. Next slide, please. First and foremost, as Karl mentioned, with the expectations of the committee members, First and foremost, I commend this team for their work this year. And as we've said time and again, with everything we've done this year, it's been exceptional and extraordinary and out of the ordinary. And this team for our ELA 912 adoption did phenomenal work this year and really committed to the process. Our team is comprised of teachers who represent Rio Rancho High School, Cleveland High School, and Independence High School, as well as all grade levels, 9th through 12th grade. They are teachers who support our English learners, teachers who support our students with disabilities, pre-AP representation, and then of course our AP language and AP literature, as well as reading intervention. So it is a diverse team with a wealth of expertise and experience, and the team did just outstanding work this year to reach this recommendation. Next slide, please. Our adoption process timeline is similar to those you've seen before, but I do want to highlight a couple of key pieces of information that, especially given this year, that will be of interest. Beginning with the fall, we always start with the PED's list of approved instructional materials. So once they complete their process in the summer of reviewing materials, we start with their approved list. And so that was the case, of course, for this year as well. Our committee in the fall worked on developing a list of priorities for these instructional materials, which it's a big decision. The gravity of it was not lost on them for the next 6 years that we'll use in 9th through 12th grade English language arts. They focused on establishing priorities specific to Rio Rancho Public Schools, students, and teachers. And so I wanted to highlight that as part of our process because it really did drive our work. It drove the conversations and really helped the team objectively review the materials and find the best fit for our district. In the spring, one of our unique challenges was with our community engagement and feedback. Usually we have a day devoted to an open house, and we set up one of the training rooms with the materials, and our staff and community members come in and chat and review the materials and provide feedback. In the absence of that, we did get to reimagine that part of the process in a pretty exciting new way. So we offered 2 options for community engagement, and this was through a February open house month, if you will. One option was the review of materials online, digitally, anytime, anywhere, and then the completion of feedback via Google form. And the second opportunity to learn about and engage in the process was through a series of 3 informational sessions live streamed on our YouTube channel. And so we did get between 60 and 90 views on each of those sessions, and then some feedback on the Google form. And then, of course, it's the end of the adoption journey, but the beginning of the true journey as we implement these materials for the next 6 years. So this summer, we will provide professional learning for teachers and administrators and take a look at the materials specific to curriculum needs in our district. So the committee's recommendation for, as I talk through each of these points, I'm just going to highlight a couple of items, features about each set of materials that made them stand out from the other publishers. So for English language arts, 9th through 12th grade, the committee recommends the adoption of Springboard. This is what we have currently used in our classrooms, but I want to note that this is the 2021 edition, which has been updated significantly from the 2018 edition. One of the key features with Springboard is a full-length novel unit in grades 9 through 11, and then a full-length play drama in 12th grade. And that was absent in other publishers. And then also the Springboard's attention to special populations and differentiation is superior. For reading intervention in our Read 1, the recommendation is Read 180. And especially for high school reading intervention programs being short in supply, the team was very excited, led by Jeanette Gonzalez, one of our coordinators, to find this program. It offers a reading inventory diagnostic test that fully differentiates for students, which is in that personalized learning, which is really essential. And then one other feature is that it embeds growth mindset and Carol Dweck's work throughout, and kind of weaves it throughout the material. So it really does touch on that social emotional learning component, which is so important there. Pre-AP English 9 and 10 will use Springboard, the 2021 edition, in conjunction with Pre-AP Classroom, which offers differentiation and enrichment through assessment and then other AP considerations that then get woven into the Springboard materials. And then in AP Language and AP Literature, one of the exciting recommendations that they are making is to rent ebooks for students throughout the year. And so that provides a different avenue, not only for students to read books, but it also doesn't lock the teachers into certain print materials that then they have to use for 6 years. The nature of an AP English course is that they do change titles from year to year. Next slide. And here's our estimated budget, as has been the refrain throughout this evening's meeting. It's challenging right now to make such estimates. But I do want to note on this slide, just highlight, it's a mix. The materials are a mix of print and digital. And we really, through this adoption, are serving the needs of all students in English language arts. So we've got our core ELA reading intervention, and then attention to our robust AP program as well. And I will turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's such a privilege to be with all of you. President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland, buenas noches. My name is Kelly Pierce, and I am an elementary and secondary instructional coach and coordinator. Coordinator is actually the correct term. And I just had such a wonderful time, and it was such an honor to work with the Rio Rancho Public Schools World Languages Adoption Team this past school year. Next slide, thank you. We have a tremendously robust language program in our district that we should all applaud. We have more than 3,200 students engaged in courses including Spanish, French, German, Navajo, American Sign Language, Latin, Italian, and Mandarin Chinese. And this is our amazing group that met lots over Google Meets. And I just really I just want to spotlight all of them and have you take a look very closely at their names, because this is all because of them. Next slide. Thank you. Our process timeline for the adoption is very similar to what you just heard, English Language Arts. And just a couple of spotlights on my end. The team, when it first met and came together in the fall after the summer release of materials, high quality instructional materials from the Public Education Department, the group came together and they set their priorities. These priorities encompass such things as culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning, the language standards, of course, technology and supports from the publishers, teacher supports, as well as vertical alignment. These teachers, mostly they teach all the grade levels, from the very beginning of a novice learner of language all the way to advanced placement. So in the months of December, January, and February, they were test driving these materials, which were both printed and digital. And there were a lot of Google Meets going on, whether it was with their campus language teachers at Rio Rancho High School, as well as Cleveland High School, and with me to support them. Then came time for the publishers to weigh in, and it was a very personal experience. Instead of having presentations, the team reached out and had questions, and I put them in touch with the publishers, who were very timely in their answers. And so then we reimagined how we do the community input. On our side of things, we did a flyer, and it was chock full of links the community as well as staff members across our district could explore all of these different possibilities, the recommendations from the committee. That was in March. And now we are presenting to the board, but the work, just like Kristen said, just begins as they create their district curriculum documents, and there's professional learning that's rolled out to both teachers and administrators. So without further ado, the next slide has our recommendations. So as you peruse this table, just a couple of takeaways for you to consider. There were 4 languages that decided to go with a blended approach, which means they would like to use both printed and digital materials. 2 of them virtual only, meaning just the digital. And then 1 of the languages decided to go with print only. There were 2 publishers that straddled 2 languages. They are Carnegie Learning and Wayside. You'll see here that our advanced placement have some different publishers in some cases from the regular language instruction, and that is because they want to ensure that they're getting those well-rounded abilities for those students to engage with readers with more complex text and vocabulary. And the next slide. So this is the estimated budget for the next 6 years for each of the languages. And now for the next slide and the final slide, we open the floor to questions for ELA and world languages.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. I appreciate it. And Dr. Cleveland, is there anything you want to add before we go to questions from the board?
No, I don't think so. They covered it beautifully. So I might at the end, but let's just go right forward.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you. We'll start with Wynn Coleman, if you are ready to, if you have any questions or comments.
Yes, could you speak to the wide variance budget-wise when it comes to the world languages?
Sure, I can start us off, and Suzanne and Karl, if you see fit, you can jump in. So because we're looking for different things, whether it was the blended, only the digital or only the printed, that weighed in when we did our estimates. And there were some workbooks that were part of the French, for example, that added more to the price tag. And so it just depends on the publisher. It depends on the needs of the language teachers.
Thanks, Kelly. It's also, can I add to this, is also the numbers of students, obviously our greatest number of students in Spanish. And as you look across all of this, including 912 ELA, it's all based on the roll-up of numbers into the 21-22 school year. So that's the biggest part of it. But I think also it is the teachers looking at, particularly if you're looking at both the digital and a print, it's going to be a little more costly. It's just
So
that's how it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think what caught my attention is that French is more than, I mean, it's double like the next lower one, because you're looking at almost 175,000 for French, and Spanish is 86,000 at the high school level. So I think the French was the thing that surprised me the most. And my impression is that probably more students take Spanish than they would French additionally. So I'm just kind of wondering about that number for specifically French.
Keen observation, Board Member Coleman, and you're right. There are more students enrolled in Spanish than French, and French would be the second highest enrollment of all of our world languages. Now, the price is about double because those teachers did decide to go with both materials, print and digital. However, it doesn't mean that we would be able to fund necessarily all of the materials approved. Like Kristen had mentioned during the ELA presentation portion, it was very difficult to get an estimate at this point in time of the year as we look ahead to how many students would actually be registered for these courses and what materials we would actually need. So these projections are really based on pie in the sky numbers. In an ideal world, if we had unlimited resources, this is what the teachers would want. Realistically, it's unlikely that we would be able to purchase all of these materials.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then we'll go to Secretary Scott.
Is cost considered by the teachers when they look at this program? Because let's face it, we'd all pick a high performance Ferrari if money were no object. So tell me how that evaluation weighs into it.
Thank you very much. They don't really, at that point, they are looking at the high quality nature and how it fits their students and what their students need. Those are some of their top priorities as they're making their recommendations. And then we ask them to kind of look at, supplementaries if workbooks are needed. And again, some of that can be cut back and still meet the needs of the students.
Anything else? Good. Okay. Thank you. And then Catherine Collin.
Karl, how much was given to us for this adoption?
I'm sorry. Let me turn up my volume here because I couldn't hear you real well.
That's okay.
Go. It could.
How much was it? How much has been given to us from the state for the adoption of these?
As of this afternoon, I have not. They had mentioned April 12th as a deadline. Thank you. Yeah, it's like a unit value. When's it coming? There is good news. The state did put in 35 million versus the 30 million last year. The other good part of this is that this adoption not as large as last year's adoption, since it's 912 in world language. So having looked at the numbers, done the math, it looks like, and talked to Mike Baker, from what I can tell as of 8:34 p.m., we will have the funding to cover these funds in the SEG. Now, remember, these funds are flow through the SEG now, even though we have an object code for these funds. There's one other thing that as a board you need to know. What they did lump in dual credit into this 35 million, whereas before we had the district core plus that additional dollars, but that was only around 25 to up to 40,000 since we've added more and more students in dual credit. But we will need to cover dual credit with textbooks, just the textbook side, not the career technical side, with this money. But I think we should, having looked at the dollars, looked at the number of students, we rolled up students, and we actually, not knowing how many are going to return, we tried to hedge on the higher side than the lower side. We believe kids are going to come back to school in the fall, and we hope they do. I mean, face to face, despite our virtual conversations, I think a lot will, based on a lot of the parents who went to look for full-time instruction at other schools and they did find them face to face. Those parents, I hope, will be coming back. But so we took the numbers. I think we're good. It's about $1,177,000. That's with the digital French. So I think we just need to go back and look at that, because I think a core, we would have to go back and look at that French number and say, well, can we really afford to have both print and digital in that regard? Can you have one or the other and really meet the curricular needs, instructional needs of the students?
Okay, thank you.
Or my question would be, is there another vendor that offers both that has a good quality program? I just have a problem with 174,000 for one language and a completely different amount for the others.
Excellent point, Secretary Scott. I do think we need to look at that. When it comes to ELA, basically the state has vetted the curriculum, and basically you're guaranteed a certain price through the textbook depository for 6 years. So in the case of ELA, that's pretty straightforward. It's the world languages that we have a little more flexibility, whether it's adopted or non-adopted, and we can look at that, and I think we should.
And one other point, if I may, is that that cost is inclusive over the course of the next 6 years. So that would be significantly reduced if we did not have to purchase both types of materials every year for 6 years. So that's an uncertain point that we just don't know about right now. But the team did a really thorough, exhaustive job of looking at all of the different types of materials available. And this was definitely the publisher that far exceeded any of the other publisher offerings.
That was what I was going to add. So Suzanne, thank you so much for adding that. And that's one of the things that you do have to look at is what is the cost over the entire adoption as opposed to just a single year. And so sometimes that's, there's also one, and I don't know at all if it impacts this, but sometimes in some languages we have materials and things that are left over that we can continue to use. And then, you know, we get into another era where we need to kind of replenish an entire language. And so I don't know if that's the case here because I wasn't part of the committee, but I suspect we have a substantial amount of materials in Spanish and a pretty, you know, and some support there. So that may also have entered into the decision, but I don't know because I wasn't on the committee. One of the other things I think is interesting about Rio Rancho and our history that we are different than a lot of other districts. And so for years, we had an outstanding French program, and we've continued for a long time, and large numbers of students very interested in French. But when we started the district, interestingly enough, the #1 language that was taught by far was Italian. And if you know the history of this community, you would know why. So that's kind of faded over time, and certainly our community has changed a lot over a long period of time. But there has always been in this community a desire for a lot of different languages, including Oriental language such as Mandarin Chinese, to give our students a richer opportunity for foreign language. And we have, and my last comment is that we have a few kids who are very fluent in more than one and have taken more than one language and been very successful in it. And so those are not the common, but they are certainly, we have kids who have done very well in more than one language. So, but I have to agree, 174,000 is pretty steep unless it is extenuating like over a period of time, and unless it's a startup again of a whole, you know, a different approach toward teaching French. But it's a beautiful language, of course. I think we all know that. It's a gorgeous language, and it's been very sad to see Italian, you know, decline over the years. But it came down to not being able to find a teacher.
I took Italian, if you guys didn't see me raise my hand at Rio Rancho. Yes, we had the best teacher ever, who I still love very much. So any other questions from the board? Any other comments, Catherine? Go, I see your hands up, sorry. Oh, you just muted by accident. Yeah.
But you can hear me.
I know.
So my thing was my understanding is that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll spend that 174 for French. It's kind of like a wish list. They go in and they go in kind of seeing what the best program is. They choose that without looking, and then at that point, then the district will decide how much that they get. I think that's part of the adoption. So they're not really kind of with Noreen's question about that. Is there something else that covers? But we want to go in and find the best product for them, for their children, for teaching them. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're going to spend. So thank you.
Did that come out clear to everyone? I think that the district office is trying to tell us that it's getting late. Or you were cutting in and out, but I think everyone understand? I think everyone got it though. It's harder for me just because I can hear you in both places, but I think it came through clear enough. Okay, good. Anyone else? Wynn or Noreen, do you have anything else you want to add or anything? Okay, is there a motion on this?
So I make a motion to approve the English Language Arts 9 through 12 and the World Languages Instruction Material Adoption recommendations.
This is Board Member Coleman. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Catherine Cullen and a second by Wynn Coleman. Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us on this?
Yes, I can. Secretary Scott.
No.
Okay. Member Colin.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Okay, that was 3-1.
Okay. And the motion carries.
Thank you all for a really thorough presentation. Really appreciate it.
It was very well done.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
I muted myself. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we have actually a really great opportunity to look at the New Mexico School Board Association scholarships, and we'll consider these different nominations. We have nominations, and Catherine can possibly help me if I say anything wrong. Okay, Catherine, as I go through these. But I feel like I did this horribly last year, so let's see how we can do it a little bit better this year. But every year, the New Mexico School Board Association, they have scholarships for New Mexicans at our high schools that they like to award. And so we have our schools, and I believe this, and Dr. Cleveland, if I'm wrong, you can correct me too. But I think this year is the first year that we've had all 4 of our high schools with Independence and Cyber also submitting submitting nominations for students to receive this scholarship, which is really fantastic, honestly, that we get all of our schools that are represented. So we are given these different nominations. They come from the schools, decide the initial nomination, and then it comes to the board, and we have an opportunity to look at these 4 fantastic, amazing individuals, and to choose one, which is horribly hard because they're fantastic. But we choose one, and we are still just nominating. Then we send this on to the New Mexico School Board Association, where they will have the final say on who receives these scholarships. Catherine, is there anything that I should add to that explanation? You're muted.
Sorry, I know, sorry. The region officers make that determination of who they'll put on for that region. So.
Okay. So, so with that, we like I said, we have 4 just fantastic individuals, and Secretary Scott just stole my papers. I'm going to steal them back from her here in a second. But we have these 4 fantastic individuals that were nominated, and I'm going to read through their names and what school they come through, and then we can have discussion and decide what we want to do with that. But let me read through each of these ones. And my friend from Rancho High School, I'm so sorry, but I know I'm not going to say your name right because it is hard, but I want to know you're fantastic. So our first one that I have here is for Rancho High School, as I said, and his name is, and I want you to know that I looked up the pronunciation. It's just that I can't remember anything for the life of me to keep it. So I tried, but is Yetachai E. Samala, and he's from Rio Rancho High School. And I think a lot of the students at Rio Rancho may know him as Samala, because as I brought it up to my daughter today, she's like, oh, Samala, yeah. So another one is from Independence High School, and that is Allison H. Sego. We have another one from, and this one's from Rio Rancho Cyber Academy, which is Natasha Erin Garcia. And the last one that we have is Adam Jared Roundsville from V. Sue Cleveland High School. And so, like I said, each of these individuals, as you look through it, and we each had an opportunity to read through these wonderful nominations and read about them, and they've been just fantastic things that they've done for our community. Each and every one of them have just been an asset to our schools, and so we're so grateful to have them in our schools. But with that, I just wanted to give our board maybe an opportunity, if there's anything that that we can discuss about these individuals as we kind of make the decision to nominate one of these to New Mexico School Board Association. And so with that, how about, are you guys prepared to, if I call on you? You okay? Okay. Do we have these up? I don't know if we want to put them. Do you guys feel like you need to have these up on the board or? Okay. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, actually, you're right. We can't do that because there's some information. But I know. Thank you. I don't know if everyone can hear everyone else. But Catherine Collins, is there anything that you wanted to kind of say about any of these individuals or anything like that?
Well, they're all fantastic nominations from each of the schools. Just wonderful students. It's always a hard choice to make. For me, and I'd like to hear what some of the other ones have to say, but I think that it's great that we have some from Independence and Cyber this year. So I'm kind of leaning towards that direction.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Wynn, do you want to add anything or any thoughts?
No, I do appreciate seeing all the schools represented, and but no, I don't have any additional comments.
Okay. 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 And Noreen, did you want to add anything as you?
No, they were all four excellent, and each had something different that they brought to the table. So it's a difficult decision.
Yeah, and I'm kind of leaning, I think, as like Catherine is, and as I look at Allison Seago, as I read through, and I'm not going to read all the different things there, but I see someone who could really use a scholarship that would be really helpful, something in her life that would be, we have, our other students are phenomenal, and I don't want anyone to ever think, like, we were too good, we didn't, but I look at their GPAs and such, and I think they have a lot of opportunity, and just to receive other scholarships, and I look at Allison and think that this could be really something that might be really great for her as she goes on to college. So that's one thought that I have, and if anyone wants to add anything to that.
Amanda, I agree with you. That was my thought as well.
Okay. Anyone else want to add anything else on your thoughts? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and make, as I was talking about it, I'll go ahead and make a motion to nominate Allison H. Seago for the New Mexico School Board Association Scholarship. I should get my right notes and make that the correct motion. So give me a second. Go ahead, Catherine.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion.
You could tweak your motion, but
okay. I think I got it all in there. So nomination for the 2021 New Mexico School Board Association Scholarship. And so I made the motion, and Catherine Cullen made our second. And Kim, can you take a vote on this?
Yes, I can. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Member Cullen.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
4-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. I just, one last thing on that. We have fantastic students in our district. We're really lucky to have such wonderful students and wonderful families. And so it's hard to make those decisions because they're all fantastic. But yeah, I'm grateful that we get to learn more about our student body through those nominations. And so thank you all for all the schools who participated in that, and that we could look through those today. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go into advanced planning unless there's anything else. Dr. Cleveland, is there anything else that you wanted to hit on as I go into advanced planning, or anything from the board that I missed?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. When I know. When did you have something? I just saw you unmuted for a moment. You're
No.
good. Okay. Okay. Really, really fast, I'm going to read these dates through. Do we feel like we can try this for our next meeting again and be okay? And
this meeting worked really well. I think this one came out a lot better than the finance with none of the feedback. So
okay, yeah, we'll have to work on our finance meeting. Okay, so we'll keep trying to do this and see if we can get better. And once again, thank you everyone who's helped put this together tonight. So for our advanced planning, We have April 14th is the New Mexico School Board Association region meeting. That will be virtual. On April 26th, we have our next regular board meeting at 5:30 p.m. We will be here in the boardroom, but it will also be streamed for our public so that you can be a part of that meeting. April 29th, 2021 will be our audit committee meeting at 4:30. May 10th, we have a finance committee meeting at 4:30. Also, May 10th will be a regular board meeting at 5:30. May 14th will be Rio Rancho Cyber Academy graduation. I can't believe we're actually talking graduations. That's crazy. So May 14th will be the Rio Rancho Cyber Academy graduation. May 15th, Independence High School graduation. May 17th, Cleveland High School graduation. May 18th, Rio Rancho High School graduation. Congratulations to our seniors. This is awesome. May 18th will be the last day for Shining Stars. We'll have a holiday on May 31st for Memorial Day. The last day of school will be June 3rd. And then June 14th and the 28th, we will have regular scheduled board meetings at 5:30 p.m. And so with that tonight, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight.